All right. Hey, Tom Satterly, welcome to the Former X Guys podcast. Really appreciate you coming on the show, man. I think
Yep.
most people that have probably heard of you associate you with the whole Black Hawk Down thing and you being one of the Delta operators on the ground and stuff, but your whole career spans, way beyond more than that one operation. So I'd like to kind of dig into, a lot of stuff, start from the beginning and ask you why you decided to join the Army and go from there.
Yeah, joining the Army was like one of those quick, spontaneous decisions. Growing up in Indiana. I'm swinging a hammer. I retired. I just graduated from high school, and I didn't have much. I didn't have plans. I was a kid, and I was building houses, and that was kind of fun at the time. And my best friend, joined the Army and was off to basic training, and he came back, and we were on our way to a John Cougar concert. He was on his leave before he was going off to Germany. He was like telling me all about basic training and how cool it was, and his hair being short wasn't a big deal, and then he was off to Germany, and I thought, man, that's kind of cool. Free trip to Germany, get to live there for a bit. And by the time we got to Indianapolis, which was about an hour drive, I had already decided I was going to join the Army, and went to the MEP station and put my name in and signed up and set the process in place.
Yeah, when you're a young man in Indiana, I'm from Indiana. We talked about it a little bit. There's not a lot going on there. Like, Indiana's a great place. There's a lot of cool stuff to do, hunting and outdoor stuff and whatever. But when you're talking to a friend that's like, yeah, I'm getting ready to go to Germany, that's outside the spectrum of anything that you're seeing in Indiana. I don't know about you, but I didn't have any friends that were traveling the world or anything as a kid.
Nowhere. I had gone nowhere, and I've suspected I would have never gone anywhere. I figured it was a way out of Indiana, which might have, and being young, I didn't really put that much stock into it other than Germany. That's cool. And it's free. Yeah, I'll go, and then until the guys are screaming at you at basic training, you're like, whoa, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? This guy wants to kick my ass for no reason.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people that don't ever have any kind of intentions of joining the military seem like they come in for the benefits, like the school and everything else. Were you coming in for that? Like, what job did you choose? And like, what was your goal with it?
I wanted to be a doctor, right? I wanted to be a doctor when I joined the Army, because I was taking medical trades as well as building trades, and my mom was in the medical profession. I thought, yeah, I'll be a doctor, right? Until I figured out how much work that was. So I would go to the recruiter, and I was like, yeah, I'd like to be a doctor. He's like, oh, medic. And I'm like, huh? Medic, doctor, what? And he's like, listen, you like to blow stuff up? Do you like to build things? I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. He's like, combat engineer is what you want. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. I'll do that. So I signed up to be a combat engineer, a 12 Bravo at the time. I think it's something else now, but yeah. And quota, man, he filled a quota with my name on it, because I was excited and really didn't know what I was doing other than showing up and like, what do you got? I want to be a doctor. He's like, how about you blow stuff up and build stuff? And so that's what he kind of talked me into. And I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to be a combat engineer.
Combat engineer is one of those interesting jobs where it's a big variety of things you could do, like blowing stuff up or building things, and it's not necessarily at the same time. In the Marine Corps, usually you have units that are there to like build stuff, and then you have your combat engineer units that are out there to do demo and stuff like that. Is it the same in the Army, or you learn everything, but you're only assigned to a unit that does one or the other for a while?
Right. Yeah, I learned everything, and then I was in Germany, and our job was to blow bridges and blow up the road, crater the roads, and when the Russians came across the East German line. And so that was my first 3 years in Germany, was learning how to blow down all the bridges, which were pre-built to be blown down, and how to crater roads and build the Bailey bridges. And then I came back to Fort Bragg, and we learned how to build buildings and stuff. So I was building pump houses and cinder block and lots of construction on the ranges. So I got a little bit of both just by the units that I was at. But yeah, it was fun. In Germany, I got to learn a lot about explosives, and then it made joining Special Forces easy for me. When I picked, 18 Charlie, all the hard work was done. The demo card memorization, the math, and everything.
Yeah.
When everyone else is struggling, I'm like, I got this, man. I came from basic training, so it was easy.
Yeah, for sure. What else were you doing in Germany? Like, first off, that's isn't it kind of weird to be like, hey, we're planning, here's all the bridges that we'll have to blow up in case something happens. Like when you're looking at the real world and going, this would be the plan in case the Russians invade.
Yeah, and the reality was they would roll right over us. Our job, and that's what I first started. Said our job is to slow the Russians down until the real army can get here from America. And I was like, the real army? What did I join the National Guard and I didn't know it? So
What did I do?
yeah, I'm in Germany and we have guns and it's the real army, right? So, but they knew if the Russians came, it was going to be an onslaught, just like anything else. You got to catch up. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was kind of cool to see all the different bridges, how they were constructed to be blown up. With these chambers inside of them that we had access to, and would load all the cheese charges, huge round discs of explosives that you would lower them in manhole covers with these huge, long, 12-foot long hooks, lower them down and stack them up on top of each other, prime them, and then pull off and blow them and just blow the whole road and the bridge. And so things were built like that just to stop the Russian horde. So they're still like that now, but
That's
I'm
crazy.
sure that plan's a little different.
That's crazy when you're like building your city. You're like, hey, we got a plan to blow these bridges. Just in case you got to blow these bridges, let's make it more efficient for that. Like that's such a wild.
Yeah.
It's a concept that we don't really, here in the United States, we don't really think about. But Europe has been a continent of war for centuries. It's just been all the way back before the French Revolution and everything else. It's just one war after another. So them fighting each other is something they've kind of gotten used to over there.
Yeah, I suspect we'll get used to it as well.
Unfortunately.
It's a sad, unfortunate thing of repeating history because we don't listen to it or pay attention to it, and then we just recreate it. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of school opportunities did you have while you were in Germany?
Man, I took advantage of everything I could. I took a lot of online courses they offered back in the day. They probably still do. I forgot what they were called. And I learned how to become an armor, which made me the unit armor, which sucked. But, I learned a lot about weapons maintenance and different weapon systems. Got to go to French Commando School. Got to go to German Ranger School. Went to the Swiss March, which was like a week long. We went for a couple of days, where they do 40-mile hikes in the Swiss Alps every day, and they drink beer and massage each other's feet and sleep in tents. And we kind of did the same thing, except let's throw in some rucksacks and do it as a platoon and not have any fun. So that was cool to go down there and see everything in the Army. And then we got to go to platoon competence training down in Bad Tolz, Germany, which was run by SF guys. And that was my first, wow, this is a lot different than just sitting at the motor pool and planning to do things. So that these guys actually do stuff, versus just the training. And so I started having that vision of there's something more out there. I might not just get out of the Army after 4 years and go back to college. I might actually stay in and try something different, which that started that path for me.
Yeah, for sure. Is that normal for a combat engineer to get to go to these schools? These like the German Ranger School or the French Commando School?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't heard of anything else like that. Because I had a platoon sergeant that came from the Hungarian army, and he knew people in Germany. I mean, he knew of the schools that, like my first sergeant at the time was an old Vietnam first sergeant, and he was crazy. He was typical first sergeant from Vietnam that just used the word motherfucker a lot and jumped out of his window and cussed at everybody. But he was a cool dude. But that was it. He was done. He'd walk down the hall like practicing fishing for retirement, and just walk down. What are you doing, Top? He's like, I'm practicing for retirement. So I get it. He was burnt out, and I definitely got it when I reached year 2025. I was like, I got it. I know what the first sergeant was up to do that, then. But that platoon sergeant from the Hungarian army, he just reached out to different organizations, and we were the first full platoon to go to French Commando School together, and that was cool. And then the German Ranger School slot popped up, and they were going to give it to an officer in headquarters. And it's like, oh, yeah, Lieutenant so-and-so will go. And I raised my hand. I go, why would he just go? Who's that guy? And I don't know. I had the courage at the time. And so they did a 2-day event. They set up a 2-day event. Some Green Beret had come to our company. I don't know why. He probably got in trouble. He probably got in trouble for a Green Beret to come and be stationed in Germany. But I look back now, I'm like, that's cool. But when I got to SF, I was thinking, oh, you'd never leave SF unless you're in trouble for something.
Something happened.
But he still had all the training. So he set up a 2-day kind of selection, and I won it. And so I got to go to German Ranger School. And
nice.
That was cool. And then the PCT, the platoon competence training, I don't know who. I really don't know who set that up. Pretty cool that he was gung-ho enough to keep sending us as a platoon or keep giving us this opportunity to go do things versus sitting like all the other troops that were, in that battalion, sitting around and doing nothing.
Yeah, I had it's interesting, when you're just like a junior, like I was a Marine, so junior Marine or junior soldier, you have no idea how all that stuff works, how schools come around and all that stuff. But as I got older and I started becoming the guy that was like picking schools for guys to go to and stuff like that, I had a captain who really kind of opened my eyes to like, dude, you can do whatever you want to do. Just ask. Like if you ask and they say yes, then we do it. If they say no, then we don't do it. You know, like don't be afraid to ask for whatever. You know, this weird, whatever seems like weird specialized training that, why would you guys do that? Who cares? If you want to do it and you can justify it, why you're doing it, then ask and it could happen.
It's a testament to great leadership or even good leadership. All you have to do is be okay. To be okay and try a little bit and you'll turn guys on to things that they would have never done, which could improve them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he got to go to the French Commando School. Like for you, what was the best thing about going to that course?
It was so unique to me that we did weird shit that I ended up doing the rest of my career like it was nothing. But to do it for the first time, like, okay, line up, and you're like in the push-up position, and we're all lined up, like 10 guys lined up along this trench, and here comes a tank. They're gonna drive over you, right? So they're teaching us how to put sticky bombs on underneath of tanks, like trench warfare. I'm like, what are we doing? And so this tank comes up, and as you're laying on the ground, you lift up one hand, touch the tread, and then roll underneath the tank as it drives over you. And I'm like, all right. It was just kind of confidence building that I didn't get crushed by a tank. And then they lead you over to do this obstacle course, which half of it's underwater, you know, and you pop up underneath some of the concertina wire that's on top of the water. And you pop up for air, and there's the French commando instructor peeing in the water. I'm like, what's going on here? And then it's back to the obstacle course from tree to tree, where you're jumping such a distance that you wouldn't make it, but it's lower. So as you fall, you go further, and you're like, I'll never make that. And you end up jumping and make it. And it built a lot of confidence for me and showed me that you could do a lot of different things that you think your body can't do. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, we got driven across the schools. It's French Commando School, but it's in Germany. It's weird. It's right on the French-German line in Breisach, Germany. And they drove us across into France and put us in a castle in like potato sack pants. And they took our shoestrings away out of our boots, and we had brown T-shirts, and that was it. And we were like, it was our E&E. And we were supposed to like follow an E&E plan and get recaptured and detained and tortured and then sent on our way again. But we kind of, our group, I watched our route as we drove across. I'm like, okay, straight left. You know, I was trying to remember. And by the time we got there, we're in the basement of this castle. You know, there's no light, and he gave us like 3 matches and a note. And we finally we burnt the 3 matches out. They didn't work. Somebody finally opens the door because we're standing in the dark for an hour, nowhere to go. I mean, it's pitch black. Mm-hmm. All our matches are broken. We don't know what to do. He finally opens the door and says something in French, shines a light. We read it, and is like, you need to go to this point. And so we figured out how to get out of this basement, out of this castle. And we ended up running across the international border. France to Germany, just kind of watching it and timing it, and then took off running up into a vineyard, people chasing us, and we made it back to the barracks by like midnight, 1 a.m, and nobody else got back till like 3 p.m. the next day because they all got detained and rolled up, and they got transported across the Rhine River in a Zodiac boat. But we missed all that because we just kind of improvised, but still passed because we made it back.
You did what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, and it kind of taught me, you know, things aren't always as they seem. Think outside the box, and you can get shit done.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you went to the U.S. Ranger School, right? Have you been
to
Ranger? No, you never went to the American Ranger School?
I know. I get that a lot. Hey, Ranger buddy. I'm like, I'm not a Ranger, man. I'm going to get called out for false, you know, bullshit here that I've never said. So, no, I never went to the U.S. Ranger School.
Wow, that's crazy.
I was offered to go, but I was already in the unit. I'd already been to SF, and I was already in E6, maybe E7. I'm like, you know, and a couple guys had went as E8s, and they're like, oh, you know, Greg went. He's the oldest guy to ever go to Ranger School. And I go, I don't care. He also flew in the back of a B-52. I don't want to go to Ranger School anymore. It's like, I don't need the leadership. I don't need the patrolling. I don't want to get screamed at by some guy who's just going to fuck with me for, you know, 4 weeks. So I kept declining it. Like, no, thanks, man. Thank you.
No need. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you to compare it to the German Ranger School, but I guess you can't really do that.
It's probably a lot harder.
You think so?
It's, you know, I think it's longer.
3 months, right? Isn't the American Ranger School 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, mine was a month-ish, a little over a month, and it was more of a raids, and it wasn't like a leadership school. Especially for me, I'm the only guy that spoke English in the thing, and so it was difficult for that. But they had a lot of things like you didn't eat unless you did the raid or the ambush correctly. If you did it incorrectly, the vehicle just kept driving, and that was your food and your supplies, and you didn't do it right. You didn't have anything. So it taught us to make sure things went down right, and to have a backup plan. But I don't, I honestly can't compare because I wasn't. But from what I've heard, it's not as hard. It's not as intense.
Was there any any kind of pressure for you to do well because you were the only American in the course?
Oh yeah, because my translator failed like on day 3. They sent a translator with me, and he failed out on day 3.
Nice.
It's like, well, I went to this selection to get to this course, and now you get to come, just on your own because I can't speak German good enough. And then he failed out on day 3, so I had a breakdown in the middle of that thing, just sitting around trying to crack a joke was how I got through stress, and I'm lonely, and I can't communicate with anyone other than just staring at them, and they're having fun talking to German when in downtime, and I was just like cracked a joke one day out on a patrol base, and everybody just stared at me. I started crying. I was like, I'm just gonna go out here and shine my boots and pull security or some shit, man, because I got to get my shit together. So it was a lot of alone time for me that I think it helped me grow while it was destroying me at the same time. But it was it taught me a lot, man. That's for sure. And it taught me a lot of what I could do, with the absence of communication, at least verbal communication.
How did it kind of like shape your perspective of our partner nations? These other, like the Germans and the French militaries and stuff like that.
I gained more respect than I had as a kid. We're America, we're the best, we do everything the best. And then I saw that these guys were really good at things. Did they get the equipment we have? No. Did they get the money and the training we have? No. I mean, obviously we're pretty rich in that manner. But they tried. They tried, and they made do with what they had. And it was weird as well. Like, you get your little lunchbox at French commando school, and there's some pate, and there's some cheese, and there's some French bread, and a warm beer, and a box of 3 cigarettes and some matches. I'm like, they still send out cigarettes and matches and beer in an MRE box. It's just weird to me at the different cultures that I had zero, access to growing up in Indiana.
Yeah.
And then boom, here I am in Germany, and I'm what, 18. I'm at a bar, at a club, drinking beer because you're old enough to put it on the bar. And then I'm off in French commando school where they give you beer and cigarettes. I'm like, man, I don't know how they can be half as good, because we get yelled at for cigarettes half the time. So they had a lot of skills. But again, when you're young and you're looking, you're like, we're the best anyway.
Yeah.
So I had that attitude going for me.
For sure. It's crazy, like, to come back around to the whole Indiana thing. Like, you're out here doing all these wild things, and your buddies that you probably knew from high school that are still in Indiana have no idea, and it's just such a split in like life paths,
It's weird to see. I left Indiana, and 25 years later, I retired. I had been around the world. I had been in combat around the world. I had done things around the world that nobody knows about, that I almost died doing. And, I met so many different people at different levels. And then you come back and you talk to your friends, and you're like, oh man, you just, it's like a loss of connection, that you've grown so much and they haven't, because they've stayed stagnant in the same location. Yet they think they're just as enlightened, right? Everybody thinks they know what's going on everywhere. And then when you go out and you go around the world and you do so much stuff, and you come back to someone who hasn't traveled the world or even left a state, it's like, man, there's a big difference now. It's hard to stay connected to people that haven't seen as much as you've seen.
Yeah, for sure.
And don't understand what you understand, and they're very adamant in their ways, but you've seen that that's not necessarily true, what you're screaming about, so it's kind of like a lot of growth that your friends don't get to go through, that I went through, that kind of separates it, and it's sad.
I've always said on the podcast that one of the greatest things about the military is the exposure you get to different cultures, not only from traveling around the world and stuff, but just from people in your own platoon. The thought processes of people that are coming from all corners of the country. Plus, I don't know if you ever served with foreigners within the American military, but we had foreign guys in the Marines that we worked with. Yeah. And it was like, I don't know, it's just different when you've gone to like Afghanistan and you see what it looks like, or you've gone to Saudi Arabia and you know what the vibe is there. And then you hear someone on TV talk about it that's never even left the country, or you hear one of your friends talk about it that's never left, and you're like, what are you even saying right now, bro? Like that's not even like reality, you know? And
Yeah.
I will also say that me traveling to some of these places also doesn't mean that I'm an expert in any of these places
Right.
either. It's just that I've
Right.
been exposed to some differences that other people may not have.
You're a little more enlightened. You're more exposed. You have more experience. Therefore, you are more well-rounded. Doesn't mean you know everything. Nobody knows everything. I wish I knew everything. It might be boring, but going off and seeing the world. And you hear a lot of things about the military's racist, the military's divided, the military's this, and I'm like, the military's a slice of the world, man. It's a
Mm-hmm.
slice of society. Society's divided. Military is probably, if you ask me, is less racist, less divided, because we're all joined together in struggle. And no
Yeah,
one
for
cares
sure.
what color struggle is, man. No one cares how when that drill sergeant's screaming at you and they're going to come kill you. Nobody cares. You join together, you work together, and you figure it out. The skin color doesn't matter. Where you come from doesn't matter. So it's just all that yap. People are, oh, the military is this and that. I'm like, the military's hardened because it's a tough job, but they grow, they develop a bond, and you can't break that, after that at all. You won't be able to break it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it's a great thing. I think people underestimate the amount of experience, like world experience, and just like exposure to different kind of thoughts that people get in the military from the people that they're around. Because you're right. It's like you're from Indiana, you're going to be in a platoon with someone from like Virginia and a guy from Southern California and a guy from Oregon and a guy from Montana, and they're all have these weird, the Montana guy's a rancher. The guy from New York has never even driven a car before. The Southern California guy surfs. It's and you all come together and everything rubs off on each other.
Yep.
It's such, I don't know. I really enjoyed my time. And that's probably one of the best things that happened, from me joining, is just that exposure to so many different people and cultures and stuff like that.
I honestly believe everybody should do 18 months, 2 years, whatever we, the conscript thing. People are like, oh, no, shut up. No, it's choice, choice, choice. I'm like, yeah, you can have choice, but I think everybody needs a little parenting from time to time. And if your parents don't do such a good job, the drill sergeant stepped in for me. My parents did a good job, but I saw a lot of guys that show up, troubled people that you could tell start off in basic, and you're like, oh, stay away from those guys. That's going to be trouble, because the drill sergeant's tuning in on them, man, throwing them down the stairs and kicking their ass. And it changes. That tough love changes them, and they become a contributing member of society, and they understand the process. I think it's a good wake-up call for people.
It is. I go back and forth on that. Sometimes I think that I'm like, yeah, 2 years of mandatory service would be good. And then I'm like, no, we can't make people join the military. And what's it going to do to the military? Like, it'll water down stuff. You'll get people there that don't want to be there, and you're just wasting money to send them off in 2 years. And then I think, well, maybe it's not just a military. Maybe it's just 2 years of government service in some capacity. I remember being a kid and reading about the, what's it called? The Civilian Conservation Corps.
Yeah.
That rebuilt all the national parks and did all that stuff. And I'm like, why, as much of a socialist and communist kind of thing that was, like, why can't we do something like that again? And for people that don't know what that is, like during the Depression, one of the programs they put it out there like, hey, young males that want to come and work, we have jobs for you. And they took them out to the wilderness and built hiking trails and national parks and all these things. And they fed them 3 meals a day. They had to send, I think it was like half their money they had to send back home. They couldn't keep it. So the whole point was you're bettering yourself through work and stuff, and you're also setting your family up by sending money back and helping the entire economy kind of deal. And I'm sure there's
shocking revelation.
I know. And I'm sure there's parts of it that are bad that I don't know about and stuff like that. I'd love to hear more about it. But I think something like that, people have to have buy-in, right? There's a lot of anti-American stuff going on right now, and I think a lot of it is because, one, people don't realize how good they have it because they've never left America.
Bingo. They've never known struggle, so they're bitching about the comfort they live in.
Yeah, dude. I mean, look at Afghanistan right now. Look at we left Afghanistan, and now women can't go to school. There was a female, one of their female ministers that was in their Congress or whatever was just killed 2 days ago in her home in Kabul.
Never saw that coming, right?
Yeah.
We never saw that coming.
People don't realize how good they have it until they leave the country and they're like, oh wait. I mean, look at Brittany Griner. Getting called into Russia. Before, the thing with her, everybody was like, look, she wanted to take a knee and she said she hated America and America was racist. Why are we helping her? And it's like, dude, people realize once they leave and that reality of a different country kind of smacks you in the face, you're like, oh man, it's really not that bad. You know, we
Yeah, when
really
you
don't have it that
realize
bad.
you finally have something to compare how you live to, right? I now I can compare how I live to something else. Now I can actually say something versus I've always been here and I'm going to complain and bitch, but I really can't because I don't have a comparison. I'm just complaining and bitching. Now go get rolled up in Russia somewhere for something simple and get stuck in there for months and months and not know what's going on. You know, it's
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm rethinking just how special our United States is.
Yeah, for sure. We live in a time where people can complain about how oppressed they are on their $1,000 iPhone while sitting in a coffee shop on Wi-Fi.
Walking around with a supercomputer in your hand, man.
It's crazy, dude. But let's get back to the military stuff. So you talked about being doing a Swiss training in the Swiss Alps. Can you go more into that? Because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, we ended up just doing it over a weekend, and it was 40 miles a day, and we did it 2 days in a row. They do it for a week, and it's kind of like the German Volksmarches that they would do. I mean, it's trail hiking with beer stops. You know, Germans love to drink their beer.
Mm-hmm.
But in Swiss, they did it down in the Swiss Alps, and we stayed in a bunker in Bern, Switzerland. Bern, Switzerland is set up like a military organization. All of your neighborhoods is your platoon, and somebody in there is your leader. You know, and they've all been trained a little bit. And I think their weapons, if they have them, are centrally stored. So each neighborhood in cities like in Switzerland, at least Bern, are set up like military organizations. And so they have all these bunkers underneath all of these fallout bunkers underneath all these neighborhoods, and we stayed in one of those. And you go down, and it's huge ramp, and you walk down to this huge door. I was like, this is exciting just to be here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you go through all these shower areas, which are the first place, and then you see food storage, and then there were these rows and rows, eight high, all around of bunks, and they were just basically sheets of plywood and mats on them. So you're sleeping like sausages next to each other in these rolls, you know, sardines. And I was sleeping down there, and it was all the people going to the Swiss March, and it was packed. And I remember sleeping, and people show up drunk, Germans and people from around the other parts of the world were showing up, climbing up, trying to look for places to sleep. And we got up the next day and just humped 40 miles, man. And then you get to the end, and everybody's partying and having a good time. It's like we're all getting our feet covered with blisters and preparing for the next day. And this is our platoon sergeant just wanted to smoke us and take us out and have us hump through the mountains and do it differently than all the fun people. You know, we did. It was fun, but it wasn't as fun as everyone else was having. You know,
Well,
they were all
that's
having,
the military way.
yeah,
It
yeah.
can't be fully fun.
Let's ruin it a little bit, just a little bit for you.
Man, 40 miles a day. That's insane, dude. That's intense.
Yeah, it sucked.
Especially in the Alps. It's not 40 miles of flat land. I mean,
Yeah,
you're doing some heavy, I assume you're doing some heavy climbs there.
it wasn't horrible because there's people of all ages doing it, but
Yeah.
it was definitely long, and there was definitely some humps.
Even 40
up and
miles
down.
on flat land would be
Mhm.
tough,
It'll
especially if you're
kick
not
you.
used to it, you know.
It'll kick your butt.
Something like that has got to be great preparation for going to the unit and going through selection and all these other things, you know. That's you had what a great way to like prep yourself in the regular army. In the big army,
Yeah.
you're getting to go through all these courses.
And
Which
I had
is
no idea.
wild.
I had no idea either. I had no idea I was going at the time. I was still getting out when I was doing all this stuff. It was just fun. It's like I'm gonna take the most advantage of everything I could. And I was lucky, like I said, to have that platoon sergeant that cared enough to find things like that. Because like you said, when you're young, you don't know what to look for and how to set anything up and go anywhere and get money to do it anyway. The
Mhm.
regular army to ask for money to send a platoon somewhere, that's
Yeah.
like they're like, what? You want money? No,
No way, bro.
no.
We gotta buy bullets with that. So you say you were still thinking about getting out at that point, even after all this cool stuff you're getting the opportunity to do. At what point did that switch? When did the switch to like, hey, I'm gonna stay in kind of flip?
At year two, one of my close friends that went to basic at the same time, but in a different company, was in the same company with me there. And he showed me a picture of his dad holding him, and he was wearing his dad's Green Beret. He was a baby. He's like, I'm going to be a Green Beret. You know, my dad was a Green Beret. I'm going to be a Green Beret. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I want to be a Green Beret too. So I adopted that dream. And then shortly after that Green Beret was assigned to our company, and then German Ranger School, and it kind of sealed the deal. And I kept trying to get SFAS. I kept trying to sign up for the Bear program, give me $20,000 or 12,000, whatever it was at the time. But I didn't have PLDC, the Primary Leadership Development Course, because I'd already made E5. They wouldn't send me to PLDC. They were sending E4s to help them make E5, but the Bear program wouldn't take me without PLDC. So I was like, well, shit. I can't get it till I get back. I can't get back until I re-up. So
Is
I
that
just
just
went
like
ahead.
an NCO school or something like that? Like a leadership
Yeah.
school or
Yeah. Primary leader. It's the basic leadership school. It was stupid, man. It was
some things never
ridiculous.
change.
It was ridiculous. I guess you learn how to buff floors there, but
You don't have
it,
your PME done, you can't go.
yeah, you just can't go now. And so I lost that opportunity. So I re-enlisted for jump school, for airborne school. And I knew that would get me to Fort Bragg. So I got to Fort Bragg, I went to jump school, got to Fort Bragg, and then I started looking for the SF recruiters. And that was the only way I could do it. So I lost out on the 20 grand on that one, but it didn't matter. I wanted it anyway. I would love to have money while doing it.
So that's pretty wild. I mean, you were considering, one, you hadn't even considered the military as an option until your buddy brought it up and said how cool it was. So then you go for it. And then you get the unique opportunity to go through all these wild schools, these foreign military schools and training opportunities that most people don't get unless they are in like special operations or something like that. And then, at the same time, you're thinking about getting out, but now you're like pushing to stay in and go for even harder training, to keep climbing that ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just, when I first started, I did it for college money, right? I'll go in for 4 years, I'll get college money and I'll go to college, that was it. Had no idea about the military. The family wasn't in the military. My grandfathers were, but that was it. And then my brother joined in high school, but I made fun of him, man. I mean, he went to basic training between his junior and senior year in the summer. And his senior year, I was a freshman and I was just making fun of him, look at you picking on my brother. And I had no idea. And so when I joined, it was just to get college money. And then when I got more interested, it's like, man, I can really do something with this. It's fun. It's exciting and it's difficult. And every course I went to got a little harder, but I learned more and I got more confidence. And then which probably turned into cockiness. I go, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll go be a Green Beret. But every single time I went to a selection, I was sick. Like the night before, I'd go, I was so scared. I was terrified. I'd be sick to my stomach, throwing up. I'd taken a bath. Like my wife at the time, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't feel good. I don't think I should go. Always the fear of failing,
Mm-hmm.
And each time you pass a course without failing, you're like, oh, it's going to happen one day. So I was terrified of failing one day. Like, SFAS jump school. SFAS, the Q course, language school, it's like, oh my God, everything you do is a stressor of if I don't make it, I'm done, But I loved it because you got to do more. And the people that you met as you did these schools and moved up in the units got better, got more similar. I don't like the word better. Got more similar in thought. And so we were kind of united in our goals. And it was great to work with people like that. And you could feel the difference as working in a regular Army unit in Germany. And there's a little separation, a little back and forth against each other. It's just not as joint in nature as people are. There's not as tight, really.
Mm-hmm.
You get to smaller organizations, it gets real tight. And once you get a taste of that, you're like, okay, I can't go back. I'm afraid to go back, but I really don't want to larger organizations that don't care about its people and don't take care of its people because they can't financially anyway,
Yeah, it's just not practical. Yeah, I was lucky enough to, when I came in, I was a mechanic, and then I lat moved and became a forward observer. And moving from being like another mechanic at the shop to being a forward observer on a small like liaison section, in the small liaison section on the teams, was completely different. Because everyone a lot better. I don't know. What you're saying is exactly right. Like when you're in those smaller teams, you just get tighter. Because one, there's less of you, so you have to do better. You can't just fail because there's less of you to like pick up the slack. So everyone's got to kind of step it up a bit. I think it's interesting, like you were saying, how you were afraid to fail throughout all these different courses, all the way up and stuff. But I think that's the mentality that it takes, right? To have someone to be able to go through these schools and get into these units, because even at the highest level units, there's still a worse guy within the unit, right? Yeah. And no one wants to be the worst guy. Even if like in there, you're the worst guy, but anywhere else you'd be like a rock star. Nobody ever wants to be the worst guy or the guy that's, holding the team back. And that kind of mentality that people get in those units like really drives up the organization,
That's what destroyed me was I never felt good enough. I never, I'm not, how do I get here? How the hell am I here? I must have snuck through selection. I must have snuck through the training. I felt that way the whole time. And until years later, and I think I was sitting in Balad during, the war, and we were having a conversation with a bunch of high level people I'd been with for years. It's like, man, I can't even believe I'm here. And everyone was saying the same thing. I'm like, no, you're the badass. No, I thought you were the badass. We're all pointing to other people, but no one's pointing to themselves. And I figured out that we all have that imposter syndrome. We all have that. I don't belong here. Or when you swipe your badge, you're waiting on it to turn green instead of red, and you're like, oh, one day it's going to be red. And it's a terrifying feeling, but it drives you to do better, that competition. And I remember the day, I mean, this is tells a story of, I remember the day. I'd been there for years. I was a senior team leader, getting ready to move on to become a troop sergeant major. And we were doing a sergeant major event, and it was a horrible day event. And I was falling behind the team. I'd never done that. My own team. I was like carrying a sledgehammer on I started falling back. I'm like, come on. I'm like, I couldn't do it. And I'm like, shamefully thinking, what the fuck, man? This is it. The kids have surpassed me, man. I got to go kill them now or something. And just that feeling of, I'm not good. I'm holding my guys back now, right? Now they're coming back to help me. And it was a kick in my ass, man. I started working harder again and harder and harder. But as you age and you have more time to do paperwork instead of actually doing your job, those things go by the wayside. And rightfully so, you have a different job to do, but now I'm in that transition of, I want to kick doors versus be the leader, And that was another horrible transition along the way, but always striving to do better in organizations like that, because you can't, like you said, you're a cog in that wheel. And if you break or you don't do your thing, everyone else suffers greatly versus a large organization where they don't miss you if you're gone as much. There's a bunch of other people that can fill in. Yeah.
Yeah, I got 3 other combat engineers that can step up and do this. So what's the big deal? Yeah, right. When you're on a team like that, it's every man counts for sure. Let's back up a little bit and talk about selection. Did you go through selection with your buddy, or how did that work out for you?
No, he left a year before me in Germany. He went to selection before me, actually. And he actually went to the unit selection. I don't even think he went to SF selection. I can't remember exactly, but he didn't make unit selection. He got caught up in the long walk and got sick and blistered feet and didn't make it. And he ended up going on to be a sapper leader instructor and a dive instructor, became officer, and did great things, right? Did wonderful things, and probably had a better, happier career than I did. But he wanted something else. So that kind of hit him for a bit. But yeah, I went alone, and it was, I had 2 people approach me when I was in language school in SF. I was sitting at language school over on Fort Bragg in the old area that no longer exists. And they came over and they were in the Q course with me from the unit. And I didn't know that. And they were just changing, their career path, their MOS. They were staying in the unit, but they wanted a better chance to get promoted by being in a different, MOS. And so they went 18. And they said, we saw you in selection. We think you have what it takes. Here's a phone number. I think you should call this recruiter. It's for this organization. I'm like, okay, shit, okay, I'll do that. And I called them, and they set up a date, and they came over, gave me PT tests, psychological evaluations and stuff, and then gave me a selection date before I even moved to Fort Campbell to go to 5th group. I was still in language school.
You haven't even finished SFAS first. and you're already, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, I'll do that too. So I was still climbing the mountain without ever stopping to enjoy where I had made it to, So I went to 5th group. They were all deployed in the first Gulf War. They were already gone. And so I spent 2.5 months waiting on selection because I was non-deployable, because I had a selection date, which I didn't really know that made you non-deployable. And I'm like, oh, well, shit, there's another conflict I'm missing. So I'm freaking out. And so I just 5th group, all I did was exercise, rucksack, got my feet tough, ran, more rucksack marching, and just kept doing it. I went to selection, made it, and went right back. So I really spent 3 months, 4 months, maybe most in 5th group.
Wow.
And saw the boys for about 3 days when they came back, like, hey, a new guy here. And I'm like, don't worry about it, man. I'm heading out. See ya. And I packed up and was back to Fort Bragg again.
That's wild, man. That's, that's probably the best thing that could have happened, though, right? Where you just have that 3 months to prepare with no one really kind of messing with you. Yeah,
that definitely helped me toughen my feet up, get into shape, get my head right. Just pure focus of well, there's no work to do. So I'd spend their money and I'd make sure their barracks and everything stayed open and kept everything running. But all I did was exercise and swim and just get ready. And it made selection kind of simple for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just being fit, having my feet tough. I mean, that was the only simple part about it was my fitness. Everything else was tough, the mental toughness of it. But it was yeah, things just kept happening, for me. I didn't plan all this. It was just opportunity kept popping up. And so I
Right
kept
place, right
grabbing it.
time.
Yeah, I was lucky. I just kept grabbing it when it came to me.
Yeah, that's smart though. I mean, you have to. I think that's something that some people don't understand is identifying an opportunity and taking advantage. Like if you were to say, nah, maybe I want to spend a couple years as a Green Beret before I try that. How much different could your career have been? How much different would your life have been, really?
Yeah, I'd have been stuck there. I mean, once you get settled, you're working. When you're working, your team doesn't want you gone. I mean, it's hard to take people to get them to go to selection. I get it. Units feel like they're losing their numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably losing their best guys because those are the guys that want to go, the guys that are fit, the guys that want more, the guys that want to do more. So they don't like to lose them, man. So they don't like to give them that time to train, obviously. So it's on your off time. That's when you train. So I was lucky to have that that time for sure.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What kind of advice do you give someone that's an active, in the active like forces, the big army? How do they prepare for something like selection when it takes dedication to even get ready for that?
Yeah, no, they'd teach you everything at selection. If you showed up at selection in shape and didn't know what to do, didn't know how to read a map, they'll teach you. And they teach you from all the way out to space and bring it all the way in down to 1 meter, how to identify 1 meter grid zone identification. They teach you how to pack the rucksack. They teach you how to walk up and down a hill. They teach you how to drink water while you're walking. They literally take the time to sometimes make you feel stupid to show you things that other people might not know about. So you're all on the same even playing field, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the same equipment they issue. Everybody's got generally the same boots and you all have the same gear in the same amount of time. And so they make it even and they tell everybody the same information. They don't speak to anybody. They write on the board and it's just up to you. So if you're going to go to selection, expect to make sure your feet are tough, right? You can't hump up and down on with blisters. And when you're walking a side slope on a mountain, you're going to get blisters on the side and tops of your feet, right? When you're going down, you're going to get blisters on your toes. You're going up, you're going to get them on your heels. And you're going to do all that every day for about 12 miles a day or more. And then it's just going to keep increasing. The weight in your rucksack increases, the length of the day increases, the amount of food they feed you decreases, and the amount of sleep you get doesn't really decrease, but you're out in the woods now instead of the barracks and getting fed steak and lobster. Now you're out in the field eating MREs and sleeping on the mountaintop. So it changes, and then the times get probably shorter and shorter, and it all adds up in the end. And they slap you with the big long walk at the end after all that, and then you get to go to a board. So it's one of those well-rounded selections that finds a person that won't quit, finds a person that can operate on their own, finds a person that can, use land navigation, which is very stressful, and put it under time constraints. So like you're at a race the entire time, your brain's thinking, I'm going to get cut. I'm going too slow and I'm lost and oh shit. And so you got to keep your cool. And then they throw you through the board to find out what kind of person you are as well. And it's all done individually. Like selection for special forces is team events, team driven, individuals on a team, I'd say the unit selection is more of just individuals operating in a large group, but you're an individual the entire time. Everything's up to you. You can't motivate, you can't demotivate, you're not screaming at people, you're not talking to anybody, and it's all you. And so when you make that selection, it says a lot about a person that can make those. It says a lot about a person that can complete it and not even get picked. I mean, or even halfway through. We had a guy from the Army band went through when I was an instructor. He had jump boots on, the slick bottom polished jump boots. And he brought a guitar with him. And we called him Guitar Man, but he made it to like stress 4 or 5 day. He made it pretty much all the way through before he got pulled, and he was happy as shit. And I'm like, I'm surprised you made it this far with those boots, brother. But he had no idea what he was doing, but he wanted to make advanced land nav and get the certificate for that, so he could be ahead of the rest of his band members for promotion. And he did that. He is probably a general now. I don't know, but
that's crazy.
It's an individual selection that if your feet are tough and you can show up and you can carry 80 to 100 pounds on your back for an extended period of time and not demoralize yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
People that quit, I hear all the stories. I don't want to go. I didn't want to go. It wasn't for me. I'm like, dude, it got sucky and you quit. That's it. It's okay to say that. I thought about quitting 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about quitting 2 miles before the finish point. And I didn't know I was almost finished, but I almost quit there. Thank God I didn't quit. So that's what they're looking for is people who just don't quit. I mean, because other than that, it's an excuse, right? I mean, you could get injured. All right, you're gonna go back. Sure, they'll let people that get injured go back, but that's why I always say the greatest failure is the fair to try, right? I've heard so many people like I was gonna go, but that sounds like fear to me, and it almost took me every time too, every time. I didn't want to go to these selections every time. Like I don't think I'm going now, and I'd go with my stomach upset, and then I'd just start. And once you start, then it's like okay, the hard part's over. Starting.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, a lot of people go to schools like that, and that's the thing they're thinking in their head. Like, man, I don't want to fuck this up. I don't want to fail here. I don't want this to be because especially these harder schools like selections, either Green Beret selection or the unit. There's a reputation. So you're going into something hard. It's not going to be easy. So in your own mind, you're like, oh, can I even do this? And you're like trying to convince yourself that you can do something that you don't even know what it is that you're about to go actually do.
Right.
It's such a
How
weird
to motivate
thing.
yourself. You don't know what it is you're motivating for.
Yeah, I had Dale Comstock on, and he talked about how he almost quit during the long walk portion, and how he was like, I think he was like stuck in the mud and his feet were destroyed and everything was just not going well. And he's just like, man, fuck this, like this is it. And, but he's like, there was no one around for me to quit too. He's like, so I couldn't just quit, like I still had to get myself, out of this shitty situation. And then he's like, by the time I got to the guy where I can quit, I'm like, well, I'm already here. This is a stupid point to quit when I'm at the I'm at the top of the mountain or whatever. So he kept going. It's just, it's crazy, man. That mental fortitude, you have to like push through and be like, hey, no one's here to save me. I have to rescue myself in this shitty situation. If I'm stuck in the mud at the bottom of the mountain, like whatever, It
might have been the same mountain, man. That sounds like my story too. I was literally cussing God on the way up. I'm going to come back and cut all this down with a chainsaw. I was literally lost. I ripped my compass off my string and I had to go back and find it. And thank God I found it. And I was going to quit the next truck I saw. And I think that might be a lot of people's story. like, man, as you're walking alone on those trails that are 10 miles long and there's nobody around and you're like, if I see a truck, I'm getting on it. That's it. And thank God I didn't see a truck. And then the next time I saw a truck, I'm like, I'm too embarrassed to quit. I'm too ashamed to quit. It was embarrassment for me to even think about quitting. Because I used to go into those RVs early on in selection. I was cocky, man. I'd storm through them. I'd run, man. I was in shape, and I'd see the RV up ahead, and I'm like, oh, I'd stop, pull out a comb and comb my hair and shit, and dry my face off and drink water. And I'd go in all squared away. I'm coming in here, red 32. Here's where I'm at. Here's where I came from. All right, your next RV. I'd storm over there and do it. Come back, and I'd take off and get out of sight. And I'd be like, oh, God. Start drinking water again. I'm like, where am I at? Where the hell am I going? Because I look like I have my shit together in the RV. But when I got out, I'm like, oh, my God, I'm so dead here. I got to figure this out. But it was a show for me for the cadre to go in and like, it doesn't bother me. And then reading your cadre comments years later after I made it. And you go back and you see your file in the folder and it's like, this individual was very cocky. This individual knew he would make this course. And I'm like, oh, shit.
I wasn't fooling anyone.
It worked. They knew I was a cocky son of a bitch.
That's funny. How, you're talking about these, 10-mile trails. Nobody's out there. You're just struggling. How into your own head are you getting? And that's got to be it's got to be one of the most difficult parts of it is that you're in your own head. Like, some people can't deal with their own thoughts for that much time.
No, I couldn't until then either. I literally, when you're there and it's you and there's nothing else but you and I equated it to swimming later when I started swimming more. When you're swimming 1,000 meters in a pool, there's nothing to do but think, and I'm like swimming and thinking. It's like I would be marching and rucking and thinking and just of everything on the planet. Why am I here? Why did I come here? What am I doing? And am I shape enough? And what if I get a blister? And well, I'm just keep going. I should quit. Literally conversation the whole time. It's almost like I couldn't turn it off. It's not an enjoyable walk through the wilderness areas. It's staring at your feet. It's looking. It's you start getting depressed. So you have to really have that motivating thought. I watch a lot of Naked and Afraid. It's like I'm obsessed with it. And I watch these people on there. And the second I hear that, oh, my kids, and I went, they're gone. They thought of home. They thought of something easier, which your brain is seeking every single second, an easier path. I'm going to go for a run as you're sitting on the couch and you flip on Netflix. And if you don't get up in the next 5 seconds or 6 seconds and go for that run, you're going to stay on the couch and watch Netflix because you're going to default to the easy path. And so as you're walking, if you start thinking of, man, I just want a meal, I just want this and that, you're going to start acting on it, right? Your thoughts become your words, become your actions. And so I just kept thinking of, I'm going to kick some ass. I'm going to fucking break records. And I would just keep going, try to go faster. Whenever I'd slow down, I'd get mad at myself and start having that, you're not going to break records slowing down, So I'd run downhill to make up for it. And then I'd try to walk faster uphill to make up for time. So I was always competing with myself during selection to go faster and not get kicked out by time. Time was my big fear, because you don't know the standard. There's nobody tells you. I don't know it to this date. Only a few people do. And so I never knew the standard. Really? Yeah. If you run selection as a sergeant major, you get the secret magic bones, the times, the math. It's a math formula, some sort of, when you start selection and in selection, how long were you walking? Probably on average. What's the temperature that day? Because we take so many readings every hour at every RV. What's the temperature? What's the weather like? And we log it in, and somebody's got the magic login book. He's sitting there the whole time, parked on top of a mountain, listening to everybody's RVs calling in, all the temperatures every hour and all the weather conditions and how many people you have. And that math formula keeps it fair to your time standard, right? So it's not the same for everybody that I know of, but nobody knows what it is. We used to sit around and listen on the radio as cadre, like, here comes so-and-so checking into his final RV. And we're all like, yo, I'll bet $10 he's gone. That dude's gone. He's been lost all day. Oh, Blue 32 is good for the base camp. You're like, shit. Or here comes another guy who's been kicking ass the whole time. He's breaking records. You're like, oh, he's so good. Like, all right, he's in the blue truck to the barracks. You're like, oh, shit, what happened? So you can never figure out the math and why, but it works. It works.
That's crazy that even as a cadre, you don't know.
Nope. They don't want it out. They don't want you sharing it because they know everybody shares things, hey, on this day you could go faster maybe, or don't worry about the first 4 days. Who knows? They like to keep it fair. Yeah. I mean, in the history of selection, they've only removed a couple of things that I know of. Though people have tried to get them to change selection, to increase numbers, to increase, whatever. And they've declined the entire time. The only thing they've taken out were things that didn't matter or weren't equally fair. Like they took out the swim test in selection. They said, well, that's not fair. Okay, so they moved the swim test to the end of OTC. You still have to be able to swim, man. But now you got time to learn to swim. If you didn't learn how to swim in your first 20 years of your life, then we got a couple months more to teach you, I guess. But the reason they put the swim test in is because a guy drowned up there crossing a river, right? So it could be dangerous. So they removed the swim test so they could teach it. And then they removed a couple of different things they did on RVs that weren't everywhere, but it wasn't anything distance. It was, a guy wearing a tuxedo on top of a mountain with a candelabra eating a steak dinner, playing opera music. And you walk up to the RV and you're like, what the fuck? And then you leave and other people are like, I didn't see that. I saw the guy with the motorcycle on the mountain. And I thought, okay, well, maybe psychologically that might make a difference. So let's remove that. But they never have. And then they changed the PT test from the 5 event to the regular, whatever the Army PT test is to make it more, fair, whatever. I don't know. But they won't remove things. They won't remove the standards and they won't change them for anybody.
And no one knows what they are except for like a handful.
And no one knows what they are except those who get selected for, CSM and commander of selection.
That's crazy. That's yeah. I mean, I knew that it was pretty secret and tight-lipped, but I didn't know it was that secret. I thought the cadre, like once you become the cadre, then you were in on the secret. But man,
now, the cadre rotate. Yeah, the cadre rotate through as well. So you can't be you're a cadre from an active squadron. And selection squadron or selection, troop will pull you over as an active squadron, give you the classes that you're going to teach during that selection. You have to memorize those classes verbatim, word for word. And then practice it in front of the sergeant major, and he's like, all right, you're good to go. Now you can go teach the students during your time, and you have to continue to practice that. And then you have to take those students through the mountains and hump with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have you validate new lanes all the time in different parts of the, on the proper of the areas up there, just in case a landowner shuts down a lane. We still need selection. So we need a lane that's like that lane to keep it fair, like the same steepness, the same terrain, the same time frame. So it's still fair. So we always would validate different lanes. And as you're getting older and you're like, I don't want to do this, man. I don't want to do selection again. Not even one lane. It's hard, man. It sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I bet. With that, when you finished, when you were told like, hey, you're done, what was that feeling like?
I was dead. Yeah. I got in a fight. I almost got in a fight with the sergeant major. He was trying to take my backpack off my back and help me. And I thought they were trying to get me to quit or pulling me. And I'm like, no, I got it. I'm fighting it. And finally he's like, you made it. Instead of, he's like, Sergeant Satterly. And I was like, huh? Whoa, I was blood too. What, you call me by my name. I'm done. I was like, no. And I kept walking. He's like, hey, Sergeant Satterly, for you, the stress phase has ended. I go, what do you mean? What do you mean? It's for me. Like, is it over for everybody? Like, or for me? No. For this, the selection, the stress phase has ended for you. I go, am I done? He's trying to take my rucksack. I'm like, no. Am I done? He's like, no, you're done. You finished. You completed. I go, did I make it? He goes, yeah, you made this. And I go, oh, okay. And I let him take my rucksack, and they walked me over to the fire and gave me some glue vine and some sandwiches. And then I stuck me in the back of a 15-passenger van because there was nobody there. It was foggy, and they weren't flying us back. Normally they fly you back in a helicopter. I got the 2-hour drive. I climbed underneath the seat of a 15-passenger van and fell asleep on the floor. And I woke up 2 hours later, just stiff as shit back at the barracks trying to get out of there. And I grabbed a chair and sat in the shower for 2 hours with the water running over my back. And then I went and cleaned all my gear and went to bed. And I was like, that was it. And I woke up, and then I waited a week. I think that was a Sunday, maybe. I went to the board on a Thursday. So I got that entire week to sit in the barracks and like, what the fuck?
You don't know. You still don't know.
Nothing to do. You still can't go anywhere but up and down the one road. And I'm like, well, people start going to see the shrinks in the board and everything. And it was like, they were the overseas guys. They were trying to get them back first. And so I was an easy flight home. And so I was one of the last guys. I'm like, shit, let's just get this over with. So the stress of that week was tough. And then you go to the board, and that was like an hour, maybe an hour of, oh my God, what have I done? And these guys are grilling me and trying to make you cry and see what you do. And you just sit there. And it was, welcome to the unit. I was like, oh shit, what? Yeah, well, we think you have what it takes. So welcome. Because it started off with, Sergeant Satterly, you're young. Because they sent me out and I came back in. I was like, Sergeant Satterly, you're young. As a matter of fact, you're one of the youngest guys we've had come through. And my mind went, oh, fuck. I want to start cussing. Fuck all y'all. I didn't. Because some people had gone through selection before that were in my class, and they were telling me, hey, you're young. It's your first time. If you don't make it, don't worry about it. They'll bring you back. And I'm never doing this shit again. Yeah, I'm never doing this shit again. And so when they started that sentence with, you're young, man, you're very, very young, my shoulders probably dropped. And I was like, oh. He's like, but we think you have what it takes to be a good NCO. So welcome to Delta. I'm like, what? It was just, you're trying to be cool, but it's hard to be cool, even though all the sergeant majors and commanders and shrinks and everybody's standing in front of you. And I'm trying to keep my shit together. I just want to get out of that room and go out and scream somewhere, So I got back, got to the payphone booth and called my wife at the time. Hey, I made it. I'll be home. I don't know when I'll be home, but I made it. And she's like, oh, little did she know she'd never see me again.
And that's when it began. Yeah. Now, like, sitting and waiting and wondering if you made it. Because, people that may not know, just because you finish selection doesn't necessarily mean you're getting selected, or the assessment portion doesn't mean you're getting selected to go to the unit. Right. You could do all of that stuff and then be like, sorry, man, you're just not a good fit, which would be heartbreaking.
They tell you in the unit when you get there and when you make it, remember this always, selection is an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
Every day is selection. And I was like, that's not stressful. That's not stressful at all. And to go to work every day and swipe your badge and wait for it to turn green, because Because if it turns red, the door won't open. You can't get in.
Is that
And
you've mentioned that again? Does that happen when people
Mhm.
show up to work and it's just like, nope?
Won't even let them in the gate.
Wow.
Here's your stuff. It's not often, right? You've done something wrong, or you're not. I mean, they don't treat people like shit if you're on your way out for anything other than you've done something wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
they have to lock your access immediately.
That's wild
So it's
though.
one of those. So it's a lot of guys talk about it. You swipe that card and you're like, ding, to go to lunch, to get out of lunch, to get back in your bay, to go out of your bay. Every door's shut. They're not supposed to be propped open, so you can't get in anywhere unless that card gets you in there.
And every time you swipe, there's a little voice in the back of your head that could be
Beep.
like, "This might not be it." Okay,
Go
so
green, go green, damn it, go green.
wow, man. So that's what a everything about this is just mental games. Everything about it.
It is.
It's crazy.
It is. It's probably self-induced.
Oh, for
So
sure, for sure. Post selection, what's the training? What's the training like tempo like? What's the? I mean, what kind of schools are you going to and stuff like that? Getting ready to go to your squadron and be an active member of the unit.
everything's in-house, minus a couple of like driving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and some protection that they teach, but everything else is taught in house at work, or they take you on you go on a training site somewhere and do some training like infill exfil training, but literally everything's done in house. You start with the basics again. When you start shooting, it's nobody knows how to shoot. We're going to show you how to shoot our way. So you start with basic rifle marksmanship, right? I mean, boring. I think we started with an M1 when I was in,
Oh wow.
or maybe a grease guns, playing with some grease guns at the time, but things have changed obviously. But you start off with basic rifle marksmanship. It's kind of boring and repetitive and over and over and over again. But that's how you get good, right? You do the
Mm-hmm.
same thing right over and over again. Everybody's like, I want the magic. Teach me the magic. I'm like, you know how I learned magic? Doing the boring shit until it was so boring. I did it without thinking, right? It's muscle memory. So
The highest
shooting,
level of brilliance in the basics.
yeah, exactly. And that makes you the expert because you can't do anything unless you do the basics well. And so shooting becomes not even a thought. It's muscle memory. I can shoot you in the face while thinking of what I got to do over there as I'm running through a room, right? And everybody can do the same thing, and they're doing their job at the same time while shooting somebody that might need shot, and it's the way it's taught to you. It's robotic, and so it doesn't hit you about what you're doing until after that hit's over.
Mm-hmm.
I could literally tell you every room I went into and how many shots I put into what targets and what they were wearing. It was one of those dynamic things, those cartoon target things. And it all started with our first day in CQB of they set up all these targets in one room. Like, okay, we're going to take you in the room. You're going to turn left and you're going to turn right and you're going to shoot every target that has a gun in it. And so we go in very slowly, and they walk in with you and you left, right, blah, blah, blah. And we got guns and we're shooting and every target has a gun in its hand. So we're shooting every target in the room. All right, go back outside. Line it back up. All right, that went great. That was easy. Yeah, we're going to do it again, nice and slow. Okay, go back in, do the same thing, shoot every target in the room, blah, blah, blah. And he stops. He goes, okay, why'd you shoot this target? And I go, well, because, and I looked at it. I'm like, oh, he's got a coffee cup in his hand. Oh, that one's got a newspaper in his hand. Every target in this fucking room is unarmed. Every one of them, and they're all shot to shit. And he goes, that's one. Do it again. You're out of here. To everybody in the room. And it was a setup because they switched every target in the room. And it taught me, don't fucking shoot until you know what you're shooting, right? And it taught me that day. And if not, you're gone, right? You shoot too many newspapers rolled up or coffee cups or cameras or something on paper targets, you're gone. Because it's a no-fail mission. You can't shoot a hostage. You can't. The unit looks like shit. So that lesson taught me a lot, man. Hey, I'd rather die than shoot the wrong person. That's my job. When it's hostage rescue. When it's anything else, it's like, okay, I'd rather not shoot the wrong person, but it's not the failed mission. You can still get the mission over. But you learn. Look at hands. I enter that room. All I look at, I see two hands. What's in those hands? Nothing. I don't care what you're doing in life at the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you pick something up, the number 2 guy will get you, or the number 3 guy will get you. But I'm no longer worried about you. I'm looking for other hands. And so everything that it teaches you, you start off slow. It becomes muscle memory. It becomes the only thing you do, so you can think of other things while doing your job. And it's ridiculous how in tune we were to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you don't think of taking lives ever. And then, until you get out, and then you're like, look back on it, and you're like, man, I took a lot of lives, and I didn't even think about it. It starts to creep up on you. But that training is so intense every day, every single day. They have such a short time to teach you how to do what you're doing, 6 months before the next crew comes in. And then you go to the squadron, if you make that, and they're like, all right, you're on probation for 18 months now. Don't fuck up. Selection's ongoing. And then after that, they're like, all right, you're not on probation, but selection is ongoing. So don't fuck up.
What are some things that guys did that would get them removed from the unit?
Not shooting targets. Like, I just can't make that decision, so I just won't shoot. We had guys that wouldn't engage targets. That's not good, right? If that's your sector and there's guys in there with guns and you're not shooting it because you just weren't sure over an extended period of time of repetitive behavior, you're going to have to go. Safety. Biggest thing is safety, because you're shooting 2 inches from somebody's face. You're shooting over people. You're shooting around people. It's safety will get you kicked out quicker than anything. Not a lot of guys, but some guys who leave because it's too much for them. Like, they get there and they start going through training, and like, we had a crane operator guy made selection, started OTC. We got into CQB, and he was like, oh, wait a minute, this is way too much shit. This is not what I thought, because it's crazy to shoot that close to somebody in a room the size of a bathroom, a small bathroom, and you're 6 guys in that room are rocking rounds, and it's like, whoa. And you got to have your head on a swivel, and you got to be squared away and not easily excited in that manner to take off running or freak out. But safety is the number one thing. Just inability to grasp the concepts repeatedly. Guys are given plenty of opportunity. And if guys don't make it and they leave, it's not that they're bad dudes. It's just that they aren't quite good enough to do what they need to do there, And they go off and go to back to whatever organization, or they get the opportunity to go wherever they want. When people leave, they're asked, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And we'll send you there. Mm-hmm. And they go off and do great things. But it just wasn't maybe not quite good enough to be there.
Man, imagine being a crane operator, going through all that training and doing all that stuff, and then being like, this isn't for me, and then going back to being a crane operator. I feel
he might have gone back to be, I don't know, Ranger or infantry or
True.
SF. I don't know where he went, but it takes quite a man to admit, after putting in that effort,
for sure,
to walk away for something and to say that's not for me. I'm like, wow, I was impressed with that thought process. If I would never do that after that much work, I'd just stick it out,
Yeah, I couldn't. I just imagine going back and sitting back down in the crane and immediately going, what the fuck did I do?
That's like, what I look at shit like that now after those years of doing everything I did. I like, what I want to do now? I want to get in a big lawn tractor and I want to cut grass on the interstate. I want to drive north for 4 hours and then turn around and head south for 4 hours. That's an 8-hour day and just cut grass. And I can look and see what I've done. Nobody's messing with me. There's no stress other than a car hitting me run off the road and hitting me, but stressless. Not a lot of tension and stress, and nobody's trying to kill you, and you're just cutting grass, man.
That's funny. I had a first sergeant when I was in that said that his goal for retirement was to get out and become a garbage man. He's like, I just want to drive me and my garbage truck, and no one on top of me telling me what to do. It's just me doing my job. And it's, it may look like it's, not difficult. It's easy or whatever. He's like, but it's just, I don't have to think about anything.
Right.
Especially as a first sergeant in the Marines, you're dealing with phone calls. God. So-and-so got a DUI. So-and-so fucking did this,
It's like babysitting adults.
That's I could never have been a first sergeant or a sergeant major. I can't imagine what their weekend is like when they get a phone call and they're like,
let me
I haven't even picked up the phone yet. Just hear the ring. Like, damn it.
My time I was a task force CSM. So you got, 50,000 people in or whatever in Iraq. And I'm in Balad, and I'm watching Kill TV all day, doing tactical stuff as I sit there and watch these missions go down, And we had a camp commandant, and then, you got all these other organizations, civilian organizations, they live in trailers, blah, blah, blah. They're everywhere working. And camp commandant says, hey, we got these 2 females that have an issue. And I'm like, well, handle it. He comes back hours later. They want to talk to you. I'm like, all right, have them in the conference room over there. I'll meet them over there in a minute, We had missions going on. 2 females, I see them go in the conference room. One's a civilian, one's I don't know. I think she was Navy, maybe. And I'm watching TV. I see him go in there. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll go over there and handle this. It won't take long. I go in there and it just starts. She works this shift. She works that shift. She comes in and she takes a shower and then she's blow drying her hair and wakes me up. We're on different shifts and blah, blah, blah. And I go, stop. Follow me. And they follow me outside and I pointed to the TV. I go, do you know what each one of those TVs are? And they go, things we're watching. I go, those are active missions with men on the ground right now. They could die. I go, when they come home and they're finished and they do the AR and put their guns away, they're going to go to a trailer that doesn't have a fucking shower in it. When they want to take a shower, they got to get dressed, walk through the gravel 50 to 100 yards or more to the shower trailer, and then walk back wet and get back to their trailer. And if they got to pee, they got to get up and go do the same shit. You have a trailer with a shower and a bathroom in the middle of 2 rooms, and you can't get your shit together. If I ever hear you come back bitching about not being able to work this out again, I'll put you in dry trailers, and then you won't have the problem ever again. Sorry, Major, we'll never come back. Yeah, I should never see you bitching about showers and noise again. Work it out.
Perspective, man.
Fucking man. So I thought I could never deal with more of that. I don't have the love to do it at the time. I didn't have the love to go, well, let's talk about feelings and how we interact with each other. Probably been a better way to handle it versus shut the fuck up and go back to your trailer before I take it away from you.
Yeah.
And then remove your reason to bitch. But I think it worked. And the word spread. Hey, don't complain about stupid shit or you're going to lose your trailers.
That's the best way to handle it then. If word spread, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, people don't understand. They've never been introduced to that perspective. I was a support guy. I was a mechanic for the first 3 years. And when I was in Iraq, I remember guys bitching about their internet being spotty and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, you have internet.
You had internet?
I'm like, you're in Iraq and you have internet. I'm like, there's dudes out in patrol bases that don't have anything. We have AC and everything else in our little cans or trailers. Yep. What are you talking about? And I had that mindset because I didn't want to be a mechanic. I wanted to be infantry when I came in. So I was very bitter to be there. And then hearing people bitch about it, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? You don't even realize what's going on outside the gates right now.
Right. Yeah, crazy. Perspective's a big one. Perspective's a real big one. When you don't have it, you don't know it, right?
Yeah. How long were you at the unit before you got tapped for your first mission? Your first real mission?
Just 2 years. Oh, well, okay, that was combat. A year. I was down south.
What was? Can you? I mean, I don't know. Can you talk about it? Is it a?
Nah.
That's fine. Can you talk about?
It's best not to.
Can you talk about the phone call, or not the phone call, but what was the feeling when you got that first phone call for the first real mission? Like, oh shit, all of the training is coming to head right now.
This wasn't a blowout. This was a thing that we had planned to go down and do. So there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us that went down to Colombia and other areas, and we're doing some things, and just kind of traveling around and doing in separate, like a group of 3 and a group of 2, and we would break apart and go into different parts of Colombia and do our stuff. It wasn't a blowout mission. So it was one of like, oh, we got to go on a trip. It was a trip, but the things we were doing were real. And I wrote about one of it, part of it in my book, where we went to Barranquilla. And the only people in Barranquilla are either drug dealers, DEA, and that's about it. Or just the normal locals. If you're, American down there, and we were down there, and it was like, okay, are we drug dealers or are we DEA? And so everybody's looking at us like that. And we were trying to get video of that hotel. And we turned one corner and there's this guard at the end of the hotel, down at the end of the hallway. And we're like, ooh, what's that? So we devised a plan to, one of us would act drunk and hide his camera in his towel, and then the other 2 would be carrying him down the hall like, hey, it's okay, walk it off, buddy. We thought, oh, that'll work, and we started walking down the hall, got about halfway down the hall, and that dude started yelling at us. We were like, oh, he's drunk, and then he starts to pull his jacket back, like to show his gun. I'm like, all right, this ain't going too well. Apparently whatever's down here, we're not going to find out. So we got as close as we could, video, turned around, went back, and things like that, to where you're doing these missions, and even if the cops roll up on you, it might not be good, just because it's suspicious. Mm-hmm. And so that was my break-in period of doing something alone on our own, and with really the fallback would, I don't know what it would have been. But there was a couple sketchy moments. I had a G3 barrel stuck in my mouth, poking out the other side. And while my friend's reaching for his get out of jail free card, from the embassy. And I'm like, slow down, man. This dude's going to blow my head off. And he was a Colombian military. And he was just telling us, we were going to the beach in Barranquilla one night where there's no beach. And we just thought, oh, it's a beach. Found out later when we went back and told some lady bartender at the hotel, like, we were headed out to the beach on the river Magdalena. She's like, oh, don't go out there. Don't ever go out there. There's nothing but criminals out there. Thought, oh, maybe that's why the military had a checkpoint, and they were wondering why we were going. So, the guy was none too happy to deal with us. But those little scary moments were, they happen like that, and you live, and you get a little emboldened. Like, we can do anything. Nobody.
I think having a gun barrel in my mouth would kind of change my perspective on some stuff.
It was scary, man. And when I finally pushed it away, like, I was like, God, because he had it here, and I was like, hey, and he stuck it, and it went right in my mouth. I was like, oh my God. And I was trying to be cool, and my friend's like grabbing for the card, trying to find it, and making all these sudden movements. Like, can you chill? Trying to talk with this barrel in my mouth, and finally, I just pushed it back out of the way, and they let us go. And I was like, oh my God. We got about a quarter mile down the road, and I go, let's just turn and go back, man. Let's just find a different way and go back. Back to the hotel and never leave it again.
Man, that's crazy, dude. That is not the normal mission that military people are doing.
Not cool. It was, you're in civilian clothes and there's no one to back you up. So then you realize, oh, I could be fucked in a second and nobody would know, and it doesn't matter. And that was in late 92, early 93. And then we started prepping for Somalia.
And for Somalia, most people focus on Gothic Serpent, the whole Black Hawk Down thing and stuff like that. But there was a lot going on there before that. There were missions going on. There was an American presence there. The Marine MEU was going in and doing stuff. So can you tell us what brought you guys to even be in that location? And then kind of, I guess we can work through the whole op.
Yeah, they wanted us to start detaining leaders of Adid's hierarchy to try to bring him to a position of negotiating. Right? I mean, he's stealing food. We're sending food over to feed people, and he's stealing it and using it as a starvation as a tactic. And so, negotiations were failing. We had been rehearsing for it for a while, and it actually changed hands from squadron to squadron to Ranger, bat to Ranger bat. And so we picked it up and started rehearsing for it, and it just happened to go down on our watch. But it was over time, like, all right, let's try to negotiate. Let's try to get him to stop, like they do, politics, try to get him to stop, and then reach out and smack the dude and come back and say, hey, now you want to talk again? But we had decided, okay, I think when they had attacked the Marines and then maybe some Kenyans, it was like, okay, load up. We're going to go over and we're going to start rolling up some of his leaders to bring him to the table. And we just started rolling people up, and that still wasn't working until the final 3 October hit. We killed so many and did so much damage that, okay, now we'll come talk. But rolling people up before that wasn't working. I don't know if we were getting the right people, and it takes time to work your way down that list. But Adid was hidden pretty well. We caught Otto before the 3rd. That might have yielded some extra stuff. At a young age then, I wasn't privy to all the intel. I mean, I probably could have dug around and figured it out, but I was the guy that put me on the helicopter and said, go, man, let's just do this. I was the young guy. I was a young guy waiting to kick in the door and shoot you in the face and then go back home and work out some more. But we went to go start rolling up the leaders in hopes of bringing them back to the table.
Were those pretty straightforward missions, at first?
Yeah. I mean, I think our first mission was a dirty UN compound, which we didn't know about it. I remember going in and doing the hit. And I remember I was the first guy down the stairs from the roof, and I got caught up in all of the antenna wires and shit. And I had a shotgun, 1100 shotgun, for God's sake. And I rope off the helicopter. I'm running, and I go down the stairs, and I'm halfway down the stairs to the next level, and I'm caught in wires. I can't go any further. I'm like, I'm trapped. I'm start fighting through these wires and cutting and breaking. And I finally get around the corner, and out pops this dude on the 2nd floor in a door. And I'm like, oh shit. Of course, I was never trained to do this, but I screamed, freeze, motherfucker, or die. Never trained to do that. He just took off running back in his room, and I thought, well, that didn't work,
Shit.
So my team pulls up behind me, and I got my 1100, with slugs in it, aimed right at the door. And I thought, well, I'll just aim a little bit to the right and shoot him if I see an AK come out the door. And the team leader pulls up behind me. He's like, what you got? And I go, somebody just ran into the room on the right. They bypassed me like always, like planned. And Went to the door on the right, and I transitioned over to pull security on the door on the left, and they went in there, and I thought, fuck it. I took off and I went in the door on the left by myself and started clearing the room all by myself. My team leader's chasing me through 2 rooms and finally gets a hold of me. He's like, stop, you're doing it wrong. I'm like, all right, I'm all jacked up. I was all excited. And then finally we took the house down and started doing the SSC. People bringing out satellite dishes. Hey, asking the team leader, what do I do with this? What is it? He goes, I don't know, but it looks big and expensive. He's like, smash it. Started smashing shit. Then we found out it was like a dirty compound that the UN people were stealing shit. And it was like, okay, well, I guess we had a good confidence target on our first hit.
For sure. That's funny.
It was scary because you don't know. But then after that, it started heating up. The missions would get a little more heated, but still nothing like you think,
Yeah. Can you, before we get into, October 3rd and stuff, can you talk about like the atmospherics of the city and maybe kind of give people a understanding of just kind of what the vibe was like? Because this isn't a normal American city where you're going in and raiding, this area is controlled by warlords. There's like open gun markets. There's like, this isn't a normal place.
Everybody's got a gun. And you don't know who's friendly or not. And there was like a demarcation line in the city. One of the roads, I don't know, something September Road. I don't remember the name of it, where on this side was the good clan. They liked us. And on this side was the bad clan that didn't like us. So, and if you didn't know those areas, you're pointing a gun at somebody all the time. You just don't know anyway. So we only did one vehicle, radio Moog was a vehicle hit. Everything else was flying by helos. So you're kind of just staring down and all the roads are dirt. It's like what you would think Africa would be when most of Africa is really not like that. But it's like what people think Africa of, dirt roads and cactuses. Yeah. That was Somalia, dirt roads and cactuses. And you're doing hits on these houses and you're trying to run around the house to the back door and there's cactus everywhere and you run right into it. You're on a hit. You don't want to die and get shot. And now your legs are full of needles. Right? There's a lot of shit to think about. Your hands are stuck to your pants as you're trying to get these cactuses off. By the way, you got to go in that door and take people down and hopefully don't kill you. So things like that. The city wasn't laid out like a normal city. The people don't care. They're used to guns, man. In America, you point a gun at somebody, they take off running. You point a gun at somebody in Somalia, they're like, what? What do you want? I don't know what you're doing. They're not afraid of being pointed, having a gun pointed at them. So that threatening maneuver that Americans think, point a gun at you and you'll do what I want. They don't care. You point a gun at them, you're either going to shoot them or not, and they know that. And they're not afraid of the weapon being pointed at them. And so it's a different environment to learn there that your threats don't matter. You got to manhandle. If you can't talk to them, you got to manhandle and be direct about what you want to do. But when you try to consider the world as America's society, people are like, just get those terrorists over here and let them go to Walmart. They'll love America. I'm like, they hate you because of Walmart, man. Mm-hmm. They hate you because you have too much. They're jealous. It's religion, whatever it is. They don't like you, and Walmart's not going to make it better. Living like an American doesn't make them like you more, right? So realizing that our way of life is way different and way better and way easier than most people, and they're envious and they don't appreciate us coming in and trying to force things on them. And it was eye-opening to learn that you can't scare people into doing what you want. They don't care. Women walking down the street pointing out your position in the middle of a firefight, just point you out. They won't shoot me. I'm a woman, and I'm not armed. I'm like, well, how do you know the other guys won't shoot you? Because they're not very good at shooting. It's and you'd see that a lot. People would come out and try to walk down the street like they're going to the market in the middle of a firefight. And I'm like, they just don't give a shit. That's really wild. Don't. They're either that dumb and deaf or they just don't care about life like we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a weird reality in a lot of like third world countries is that they just don't look at life the way that we do.
They've grown up in a hell of a world, man.
Yeah, a lot of them don't expect to make it to 30.
Yeah, to them, dying's better. Heaven's better. 72 virgins or whatever it is. It's better than this shit I live in. And how we live now in America, most people. Sure, we got people that live like shit too.
For sure.
But I don't hear them complaining. They're not the ones on social complaining. The ones on social complaining are complaining from their 5-star hotels. This sucks. My bag of gold is so heavy. It's like... I know. I got you.
I'm in San Diego, and homeless people will literally, if you're like, they'll come up to you and be like, yeah, you got any change or whatever? You're like, nah, sorry, man. I don't, I don't have my wallet. I don't carry any money or whatever. They're like, that's cool. I got Venmo. They have the digital.
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
what? What are you
Right.
doing?
Yeah. How about you Venmo me some money, bro?
It's
Go
so
for it.
crazy.
Yeah.
Our poor and homeless are way better off than the poor and homeless in a lot of countries. It's so crazy like that. Yeah, man. So, for these kind of ops, when you're running into these, you said you were carrying a shotgun. Is that what you normally carried?
No, you know what, man? I go back and look at that. I'm like, what the fuck? It was an 1100 long automatic, and if you didn't clean it, it didn't work well. But it was one of those. I had slugs, I had bean bags, and I had buckshot all over my shit, and I knew where it was, and I carried that because I was the breacher, and I thought. There's enough guns, right? I mean, I'm surrounded by Delta guys with guns, and I'm the breacher, so that's my primary. And if I need to use it as a weapon, I'll use it as a weapon. I wasn't thinking, and I don't know why anybody didn't stop me. I used that for the first 5 missions, and I for some reason I changed before 3 October. I switched, and I got a shorty shotgun, and I went back to my M4. Thank God. It's probably a God thing that I switched because there was no other reason I switched, other than I might have been getting tired of carrying that thing, and it didn't always. I had to keep it spotless.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went with a shorty shotgun and carried my M4 and a pistol. But I don't know why I did it. I did it because there was a lot of non-combatants, and I thought I'll be the guy that can shoot bean bags at people. By the way, they don't give a shit. I hit a couple of people in the face with bean bags. They took off running, but others, man, I don't give a shit. And so, if they're there to do business, I spent more time changing rounds out and trying to figure out what to go. So I got rid of that just before the 3rd, thankfully. It was just a new guy thought process.
Like, hey, let's try this out. I mean, I understand your thought process about it. Like, hey, there's all these dudes have guns. I'll breach with this, and then I have these other capabilities if required.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing to be like, hey, I'm going to shoot this dude with a beanbag rather than put a slug at him, because they may not be doing anything wrong. I mean, you have your own reasons for why you shot him, but I mean, do you want to talk about those actually? What was a reason that you'd put a beanbag into somebody?
If I need to get them, if they're directing traffic or if they're in the middle of a firefight, and I think that that's unsafe for them as well. Or if they're keep approaching and I keep telling them to stop and they won't stop, they're either going to get killed by somebody soon, or I can hit them with a beanbag round and maybe they'll determine that I don't want them to keep coming. But one, it's hard to hit people with a beanbag round, especially from a helicopter. I had a magic shot one time that was pretty cool. He ended up being no, that was a different dude. But yeah, I 3 turns in the helicopter. I'd shoot the beanbag, and you'd see it go and just miss. And there's 3 guys in a group looking up, and I kept trying to disperse them. And I'd shoot again, and it'd get a little closer. And it's all Kentucky windage, man. There's no way to aim a beanbag with helicopters flying in a circle. And then the 3rd time around, I shot it, and it was just arcing, and I could see it, and it just hit him right in the face. And his feet flew out from under him, and he hit the ground. His 2 friends looked down and took off running. He jumped up and took off running. I'm like, that's what it took just to get him to go, But just to get guys out of there. But I'd put 2 or 3 beanbag rounds, and then I'd follow it up with a couple slugs, or beanbags, buckshot, and then a slug, because I couldn't get distance with anything but the rifled slug. So if beanbags didn't work, or if it was a real threat, I could pump those out real quick and then go to the buckshot if I had to, or the slugs. I could easily shoot 4 or 5 of those rounds in no time, and pick the one I needed for that person. But after about 5 hits, I'm like, this is stupid. I could do this better.
Yeah, that does make more. I mean, if you're only using it for breaching, like that's really the best option for the shotgun. It does make more sense to have like a shorty that you can throw on your back, pull it out real quick, fire, and then move back to your M4, back to your main weapon.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about October 3rd. Was that was this raid a normal mission at the time? Did it feel like everything, up into that point, the planning and the prepping, was it all just kind of what you'd been doing since you'd been there, or was there anything different about it?
It was a blowout hit, but we had a guy on the ground that was looking for the meeting. And if the meeting was happening, he would raise his hood. His beacon was on top of the car. He would raise the hood. And so the leaders were watching that. I'd gone out for a 5-mile run with a friend of mine, and they were playing volleyball and shit. But some of the leaders were watching what was happening. Now, whether we thought it was going to go down or not, I don't know. Or why would I have gone on a 5-mile run? Doesn't make sense. So I don't think we expected it. But when he happened to pop the hood up, like indicating they're here, it was one of those beep, beep, beepers go off, turn around, run back. Shit, get my shit on. I'm dehydrated, you know, and leave all odds, grab one bottle of water, throw it in my hip pocket, and, you know, there we go. And we launched with Irene. We launched. And I had no idea. They run to the helicopter with a little drawing. And I go, okay, whatever. I couldn't hear a word you just said, but when we hit the ground, I'll figure it out, right? I'll shoot bad guys. But we got inserted into the wrong spot just due to brownout, due to people shooting. RPGs were instant. It was near the Bakara market where all the black market shit was. So it was one of those instant, we're under fire. So before my helicopter even pulled up to drop ropes, they couldn't get into the target area. So they inserted us outside of the Ranger perimeter. And we were way under fire at the time. And we'd already heard Blackburn had fallen, and they were trying to get vehicles in to get him out. And so we had to take down a house just to get off the street. I did that, figured out where we were going, and then worked our way into the perimeter without getting shot by the Rangers. Right? Everybody's nervous. And then made it in. And by then the hit was already down, but they turned over the detainees to us, whatever, they're 10 or 12 detainees. And we took charge of them and started searching the building, and then passed them off, loaded them up on the 5-ton. And we started to prepare for exfil. And that's when I heard the helicopter above us get shot, you know, and I looked up and saw it spinning, you know, off to the northeast. And I thought, oh shit, that's different. All right. That's bad. We already known that some had gotten hit, but I saw this one right above us and I knew it was going down. So the plans start changing immediately. And then the volume of fire picked up too. And there was a Ranger leaning against a metal gate, just with his back to it, taking a break, and his neck just explodes. You know, he just got shot through the gate. It's like, fuck, this is picking up, you know? So after that, they made the plan. We started moving down the street, you know, on both sides of the road towards the crash site. Had to head east first and then turn north. And as we were heading east, every time we passed the intersection, there was, I don't know how many, hundreds of Somalians paralleling us, shooting at us, trying to get to the helicopter too, right? We're like, we got to get there first, you know, and they're already a block north of us. And so we had to fight our way through that. And that's when, as soon as we turned to go north, the volume of fire picked up. My side of the street was more shaded, and the opposite side of the street was a little bit lit up from the sun. And that's the side of the street Earl was on, and he got shot in the face and died instantly, which I didn't know till later. I saw them dragging him away. But I didn't, Earl's wounded, somebody's wounded, you know, and it was one of those, find out later he was instantly killed. But that was about a block and a half from the crash site. We just fought our way up the street, took down a couple of houses near the crash site, and the rest of the rest of the element was behind us. All the Rangers, the wounded Rangers, and a couple other Delta teams were behind us. So my team and another team was the furthest north of the movement, right where the crash site was. So we were like right at the site, and that just started the night of pounding. They just kept coming. It was we were trapped, right? Couldn't get out. People couldn't get in. We ran out of ammo. I know I ran out of ammo once. Ran out of water because we didn't bring water, and it just kept going to where it starts turning into night, and you're like, God, man, what? Okay. I was making jokes about getting home for dinner, you know, and now I'm not making jokes anymore. Now I'm asking my team leader, like, hey, are they going to make it? Like, you can hear the convoy in a big firefight the entire night. I'm like, are they going to make it? And he's like, I don't know. And he took off to go do something else. I'm like, shit, dude. That's where you're supposed to motivate me. You're supposed to tell me something cool that motivates me, not like the truth. And so that they just started picking our house apart all night. RPGs, blowing the walls down, creeping up on us. I mean, it was nonstop to where I got to the point of, well, I'm gonna die. You know, that's it. This is it. So let's just do this. Let's just do as much damage as we can until that moment. You know, I was no longer afraid. After I kind of relented, I think, that I'm gonna die tonight, but I'm gonna fuck some shit up. You know, that young kid, like, let's go down breaking shit. So that's it. And that made me feel better. It kind of calmed me. And the rest of the night was just doing business. And I remember seeing the 10th Mountain show up. A group of people walking on both sides of the road with 2 Pakistani armored vehicles, you know, the BMPs. The only things that made it. And I was like, holy shit, there's a bunch of army dudes walking up the road, man. All right. And a 10th Mountain dude walks in, a black dude. He comes walking in, he's like, anybody got any Copenhagen? I'm like, fuck, dude, really? After all that, you're looking for Copenhagen. You just left the base, and you don't have Copenhagen.
That's funny.
Fucking bum. You know, we were going to ask you for Copenhagen.
That's what we really need.
That's what we needed was Copenhagen and water. Oh,
That's
by the
what's
way,
driving this fight.
but I thought it was unique that he came in and asked for Copenhagen. I'm like, God, he didn't know what's going on, does he?
Man.
And all these 10th Mountain guys were wandering around the streets. I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. And then all of a sudden a little bird came over and was lighting up some people up on the next street. And all that brass was falling everywhere. And they started screaming, what's that? We're under fire. And I go, that's brass, bro. It's been happening all night. You just got to keep your head on a swivel. But they were out in the street like they owned it. And I'm like, you don't own it. But maybe they did with volume. We don't have volume. So when you get surrounded in a unit like us, you don't have the volume. You're like a mean, small hornet's nest. You're going to sting a lot of people, but eventually your nest is going to get crushed, if there's enough people, until you have volume like the 10th Mountain. And then that kind of makes people think differently. Even though they might not be as highly trained or as accurate, there's more of them. And that's a scarier thing.
And those armored vehicles pose, they're not.
That changes your mind, man. That changes your mind. You don't drive up in a truck anymore, like they were driving up in trucks with machine guns. Once you see an armored vehicle. And when we ran the Moog Mile after that, it was one of those turn the corner and you see where everything was parked. There were tanks. I'd never seen tanks shooting, like that. There was a tank. We run up on it. Boom. I was like, holy fuck. He shot right into the city. Like, well, no shit. What is he shooting at? It was just shooting into houses of people shooting at him. Like, this is crazy. And the Packy vehicles were there and they were shooting in all directions. And the 10th Mountain were shooting from their Humvees and shit. Just in 360, just shooting at everybody. And we hopped in the back of a Hummer and took off and got separated from everybody else. We went to the Pakistani stadium, which was close. Our 2 Humvees got lost. And so we drove all the way back to the port and then all the way back to the back gate of the airfield under fire most of the time until we crossed that little line where the good people, were there.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody's like, hey, we're in the friendly side. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Just keep an eye on them. But it was one of those, when will this end, And we went into the back gate of the airfield and we stopped waiting on other people to pull in. And nobody came. And our radios were dead because they were, they died early in the night. And so it's one of those, I have no idea what's going on. Nobody else followed us. And we're the only 2 Humvees here. Is everybody dead? What happened? Do we go back? So we drove around the airfield, pulled into the hangar, and I saw probably 10 bodies lined up on the ground, covered in ponchos and whatnot. And I could see their boots. And I could see Adidas assault boots, and then I could see jungle boots. And I thought, oh, man, there's Delta guys mixed in with the Rangers there. And I didn't know who or what part of the night or where from, and then pull into the compound, and there's Humvees, and there's blood and sand and the smell of bleach everywhere where they were cleaning the vehicles out to send them back out to try to get us again. And it was one of those smells I'll never forget of the morning sun coming up, heating up the bleach and the sand and the blood. And I was like, oh, I'll never forget that. And then finally started getting word of they're at the Packy Stadium. They're going to load into vehicles and they'll be flying them back. And then the helicopter started coming back and landing with guys on it, getting out and figuring out who was where and who was what and who was missing, And that's when we started getting word that who was dead and how many people were missing. And it was like, shit, man.
What a long day, man.
Yeah. What a long 18 hours that was.
Yeah. Were you guys ever resupplied with ammo? Was there ever any kind of, so you did get ammo? How much did you go in with?
210 rounds, man. My basic load. Everybody had a basic load, plus whatever shotgun rounds I had and pistols. And a couple of grenades, and then out of ammo. And they finally resupplied us in the night. I don't know what time it was. We're out of water. They kicked out. We didn't have a prepackaged resupply, right? Another lesson learned, right? We don't go out that long. We don't need a resupply.
Mm-hmm.
Something other units think about all the time. Prepackaged, delivered, ready to go. Fucking idiots, right? So we didn't have it. They're throwing out ammo boxes and it's exploding on the ground. And I'm out there scooping up bullets and shit. And the water jugs, 5-gallon water jugs being thrown out of helicopters, bottles of water blowing up on the ground. I'm like carrying water jugs across the street to give to the other teams and shit. And it was like, this is a bad idea. We didn't, that resupply didn't go too well because it hovered right above our building, just above 1-story level. And it took fire from the building next to us from the 2nd floor.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when one of my friends got shot in the face, resupplying us at eye level from a 2nd floor window that was right next door to us. I'm like, I didn't know there was anybody up there. Why, so we need to go kill that dude. It's that guy was there the whole time or just luckily ran up that and started shooting at the helicopter during the supply. So they took off and thankfully, I mean, that kept us the rest of the night. But then again, in the morning I was out. I was picking up magazines on the ground and knocking dirt out on my helmet and sticking it. And, if there's 3 rounds left in that one, and I'd shoot it through like windows or in directions of people shooting at us, and then find more magazines and load them back up and shoot more ammo. But learned a big lesson then.
Did it ever feel like you guys had a handle, like you guys were getting a handle on the situation? Like, I mean, it sounds like you, the way you're making it sound is like you're all in this one building and there's really nothing you can do. You can't go out to do anything because if you do, you're going to get shot. People can't get to you because there's, obviously ongoing issues throughout the city and stuff like that. I mean, what was your purpose? I mean, I'm trying to figure out before the operation, was this a contingency that you guys had considered, had planned for? Were you guys going through SOPs that you had already, hey, if a helicopter goes down, then we're going to move and try to set, can you kind of walk us through that? Because it's like, I don't want it to, I'd hate for it to come off like you guys are just sitting in a house and hoping to be rescued while occasionally having to take people out. But was it like that, or was there more? Did it feel more offensive when you were there?
Nope. I felt like we were on a fire base being overrun. Right?
Yeah.
Here we are, a small element in the middle of their city, surrounded.
Mm-hmm.
Our reinforcements can't get to us. The only things keeping back the thousands of people that were coming, at least by the radio conversations, are, hey, there's truckloads coming. They're picking more people up. Once they entered that area, the little birds would just fillet them. I mean, honestly, just destroying. The little birds kept people at bay mostly. And we had practiced before that, helos going down and the SAR bird coming in, which is exactly what happened. But we didn't practice 2 birds going down. We did, we how far do you rehearse? You only have so many men. And so I felt, I could be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. I felt that we were not in control. We were maintaining a bit of our space, but they were slowly picking it away. And had it not been for the little birds, we maybe would have been overrun. But the little birds kept them away, and the 10th Mountain finally got there with the numbers and the Packy vehicles. It took a long time to get those people together. But yeah, to me, it felt like, and I'm a young guy, right? I wasn't getting all the messages on the radios. I'm just doing my thing. But I didn't see anything that appeared to be like we were in control. We were in defensive mode the entire night to keep them from overrunning us. And we were there to protect the bodies of the pilots that were buried underneath the crash site before we could get them out and take the bodies back. So it was one of those, we're here now because these bodies can't be retrieved quickly. And we couldn't retrieve them until that Packy vehicle got there, and we hooked the chain and pulled the helicopter frame off of 2 of the pilots' bodies and got their parts out and, recovered them and be able to bring them back.
Yeah. In a moment like this, you obviously, you said you're not receiving all the information and stuff like that. Had you guys heard that one of the American bodies had been dragged through the streets and stuff? Was this something that you had known about yet?
No, man, that was a painful realization the next morning when everybody started getting back and somebody had turned on the TV and it started making the news.
Yeah.
When we saw that on the news, it was, I think the orders came out that we weren't going back out. I don't know that we could. We were decimated. We're waiting on another squadron to show up. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of anger, and I don't think they would have let us go, just due to the retaliatory issues you might have under emotions.
For sure.
So yeah, it was one of those, we saw it on the news ourselves. That was our first intel report of that, was watching it happen on the news in our own hangar and not knowing who it was really at first and freaking out and getting upset and then getting all the reports of who's missing and what we're going to do about it. So yeah, it was, that was some devastating times to see that happening.
Yeah. I mean, how could it not be, right? And I can understand the anger, obviously. And I can also understand the command going, maybe we shouldn't send these guys out yet.
Yeah. We were killing people, but we weren't filleting and just desecrating bodies and doing horrible things. And then when somebody does that brings out a whole nother human being in you,
Yeah, it's a horrific part of it. And, it's interesting. It's a part of that whole situation that doesn't really I don't think it gets talked about a lot. That's I don't know. It's such you always see that. You always see that kind of stuff in these wild countries, kind of like the contractors hung off the bridge in Iraq and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know why some of these nations, like the people in them, do that kind of thing, but
I
I don't
think
know.
it's a fear tactic of back in the day, cut heads off, right? Some people still cut heads off. It's terrifying. You cut a head off. I mean, Americans have removed killing from our families mostly. It's hidden behind buildings, the slaughtering of even animals. We don't
Hmm.
even kill our own people when they murder a whole school full of kids. They're like, well, life in prison. I don't want to kill you. It's like, man, other people don't have that. Other countries don't grow up with that. They don't get the luxury in that way, right? Kids grow up, they're 3, 4 years old. You're out chasing chickens and herding sheep because they need you. And by the way, just suck it up and do it. And so they don't hold life dear like we do. They don't mind cutting things up and cutting things off of bodies. They're used to it. They slaughter their own food and eat it. We're like, I don't even like to cut bologna, man. That's gross. So yeah, our society's a lot different, and that's a good fear tactic to use on us. They're always so bolsterous. The valley will run red with your blood. Okay, all right, I got
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
The whole valley, huh? Yeah, it's scary sounding, but when you really think about it, but when you cut a dude's head off, people think they're like, oh, that's horrible. That's
That's
horrible.
that's when people really started paying attention to ISIS, is when they started doing those really high produced, torture videos, burning people alive, throwing people in pools and
Yeah,
cages and shit. That's when people were like, wait, we should probably take care of this. This isn't a good thing.
yeah, that's horrible. Let's stop that. And that to their own demise, man. Right? You go too far, the rest of the world's like, okay, all right. Even if I did care about your struggle, now I don't, because you're just a barbaric animal.
fuck, even Al Qaeda was calling ISIS barbarians for the shit they were doing.
Those guys are crazy.
Yeah. So I'm like, when you're Al Qaeda is saying you've taken it a little too far, man. How long were you in Somalia after that? How much longer were you there for?
Oh God, I used to know these dates. I think we left maybe before October was over.
So a few more weeks then.
Yeah, I know. A Squadron came in, relieved us. We did a little overlap. We did some rehearsals together. And then we packed up and left. We just didn't have the people.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't need us to stay. I doubt they were going to do anything. I don't even think they stayed much longer after we left too. I think everything pulled out. We're flying Adid around now, negotiating again. So everybody's pissed off. And then, when the Afghanistan thing happened, everybody's pissed off again. I'm like, been through this one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do in the military, man. We reach out and smack shit, and then we stop, and then politicians come back in, hopefully after we're done, and say, now do you want to talk? But when they do it at the same time, we're fighting. It doesn't work. But yeah, I'd seen that before. We're flying around the guy we were going after in our own aircraft. That's just part of the game, I guess.
It's crazy. It's a crazy world, man.
Yeah.
Do you think that part of the world can ever see peace?
Not while I'm alive. Not in my time. It's not ever been in my time or before. I quit following. I don't even know if they have a government anymore. Are the Kenyans running it? I mean, it's still the same thing. It's a lawless government. I think they can't get their shit together in the fact that they don't trust each other. And sadly, it feels like where we're headed. When you create enough doubt, true or not, when you create enough doubt, you lose that trust. So when your government or your leaders or somebody says something and you're always wondering if it's true,
mm-hmm.
then you have issues in trust. And then when they start taking your food and you're in a nation that doesn't have, infrastructure anymore because you've been destroying it for hundreds of years, how do you get back from that, man? How do you get back from the corruption of people stealing all the money? You send them millions of dollars. Where'd it go? Where did it go in a concrete building, dirt street city? Where does that money go? So they're just kind of destined, I think, to live that way. They can't get enough people together to run anything. You get 10 people over here and you got a leader. Okay, well, you got 10 people over here and another leader. It's like these clans can't get big enough to have a united government to do one thing, it seems.
And I don't think they can get over like old tribal disputes.
Wow.
It's like they don't get over stuff.
Yep. No,
it's like a lifelong blood.
No forgiveness over there.
For sure. What kind of lessons did Delta carry away from that operation? What changes were there changes made and how, like, prepping speed? Well, we call them speedballs. Was a resupply where it was like, a packaged resupply that could just be kicked out of a helicopter. Is that the kind of changes you guys saw?
Yeah, we got speedballs now. We talked about how to take down an urban intersection, how best to defend one intersection. I mean, we were all on one side. probably knew those techniques back then, but we hadn't been practicing them, because
Mm-hmm.
you in and out, in and out, in and out, hostage rescue, right? Oh, now we're going to just go kill or capture people. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, oh, now we're in a sustained environment. Like, what? We don't do that. We don't have the people to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lesson of the helicopters don't hover overhead. They're circling the target and thinking that, oh, we'll use the miniguns to protect us. But when you circle a target in a city so flat and big, everyone knows where to come to. Like, oh, there's the party just below those guys. So everyone knew where to go to find us when our helicopter's hovering overhead. And when they circle overhead, all it is timing. Here they come. Here they come. RPG. And they shot pretty much every one of our helicopters up or down. So we learned not to do that. We learned our tactics better, and then sadly, we relearned them in Iraq, We started getting a lot of guys killed in Iraq again. And it goes back to relearning lessons of how not to be in a hurry to die, right? How do you take a target down? You don't take them down like they're always hostage rescue, right? You might slow down a little bit and make the enemy vote first before you go in the door. So that life of growing up and being trained to go in the door right away and take it to the enemy, we learned to, hey, pause a little bit before you go in there, man. See what's going on. Surround it. Ask them to come out. If they don't, they shoot at you, then bomb the place. Who cares? It's not worth dying over.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, man. There's always going to be lessons learned after a situation like that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just you have to, because if you don't learn something from it, then you're really doing a disservice to yourself and everybody else that's
Right.
going to follow you after that.
Yep.
You had a career. You had a pretty lengthy career within the unit, and obviously there's tons of other operations that you've been on outside of this one. How does someone that's working and operating at your level and doing these, outrageously dangerous tasks basically every time you go out, that's part of the job, right? How do you not let like PTSD creep in, or how does it not break you, I guess? How do you maintain the mental fortitude to not only live through an event like that, but then to keep going for another 2 decades, with probably other horrific events along the way?
I can tell you how to do it now. Back then, I didn't do it. I destroyed myself. I just kept going. I put my head down and I told myself, this will never happen again. Meaning the mission, the bad things in the mission, not anything about me or how I felt. It was, this will never happen again. So I trained harder. When I became a team leader, everybody trained harder with me. And when I became a troop sergeant major, we trained harder. When we went to Iraq, we went on hits all the time. And I never learned to counter that until, 6 months ago when I was doing my own podcast with one of my own bros that I was his troop sergeant in Iraq. And I said, remember that time we went on that mission and Christmas, everybody was bored. And I said, screw it. I just pulled a target packet out and we all went and did a hit. He goes, yeah. He goes, we were wondering why we do that. And I go, what? I thought you guys were bored. He goes, no, we wanted a day off. And I'm like, oh shit. I was that guy that just kept fucking pushing, man. I thought everybody wants to go, and I'll never get caught again. So I'm just going to go after the enemy. So I found out, like I said, 6 months ago that, the boys didn't even want to do that. They wanted Christmas off. I thought, they're bored. I'm bored. Let's go do a hit, and so we went and did a hit. My mindset was just go. And that kept my mind off of it. When I got out, I spent a year and a half in Amman, Jordan, training the Jordanian army in special forces, training. And all I did was work and party. So the separation of, work hard, play hard now, I was starting to crack. I didn't have all the things to do all the time. It was management. So I started drinking more and more and partying more and more. And then and when that dried up, I ended up back in the States. I was sleeping all day, watching TV all night with nothing to do. And that's when the post-traumatic stress was noticed. Right. Then I started, tanking worse, and I didn't notice it till I got help, but from my wife now. But it was one of those, I didn't feel it then. Like everybody says, I'm good. I'm like, you're not good. You don't notice it. I could have been a better leader had I gotten counseling, talked about how he's behaving. I was living on he's an asshole, but he's fair. I'm like, yeah, that was my prideful thing to hear. Oh, I'm an asshole. I mean, I'm mean. You know, and guys were like, I thought all you Somalia guys were like, you know, had dual personalities and shit. I was like, oh, we did probably, you know, because the
Mm-hmm.
young kids would talk about the young guys would talk about it later, like, man, all you Somalia guys were like freaking split personalities, man. You were psychos. I'm like, really? I just thought we were hard and tough, man. I thought that's what it was. And so you learn that, man, that mask you put on, um, I could have been a better leader had I gotten help back then about the things that bothered me versus just doing more to cover it up. And so I try to tell people now, like, look, man, if you have issues at home, if you're divorcing and you're drinking and shit, it's affecting you at work, even though you're not bringing it to work. It's affecting you at work. And I'd rather have somebody whose home life is good, who's not pounding the booze every night, so he's hungover every day trying to make it by. You know, and I'd rather have that guy who feels healthy versus that guy who just can keep going. You know, because eventually you're going to hit that wall, and you can actually extend your career better by getting help while you're in. And it doesn't take away your badassery. A lot of guys say, I don't want counseling because I like to be a fucking mean dude. I'm like, you can be a mean dude while doing your job, but you can come home and be good to your family too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you got to learn and practice. But most people don't. That's why you hear of all these problems. 92% of the people we help want help at home in their relationships because they fuck them up. Because they're just so hardened and they think everything's hard like that and they think it's normal. And then we all come out in the savannah where we talk like this, you know, like a pirate. Yeah, fuck it, rub dirt on it. And everybody's like, whoa, what's wrong with you crazy people? Everybody's happy and nice. And we're like, you guys are weird. And when I met my wife, I thought she wanted something all the time. Like, what do you want? You're always so nice. What do you want? You're looking for something because nobody's nice unless they want something. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? You're nice, you know? So it was, I pushed it away, you know, and we can have guys that are active that can stay healthy and still be badasses, you know, and not ruin their lives at home.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's such a weird world when you get out and you're no longer like on base around military people all the
Yeah.
time and stuff like that. You really understand what you gave up, you know, when you got out, and you really understand, or you don't understand. It's hard to understand the thought process of some people, because in the military you've been through so many weird situations and you get these like, okay, we just got to do it. You know, this is a shitty job. We could sit around and bitch about it, but just let's just go do it and get it
Just
over with.
just just do it. Yeah.
And
And
that's
no big
not the
deal.
normal person kind of mentality, and it's kind of weird when you have to deal with those people because you're like, what the fuck is your problem? You know, why?
Yeah.
Let's just go do it. And they're like, ah. You know,
And
like,
nobody likes to be called on their shit. I don't like to be called on my shit. Nobody does. So when you call a civilian on their shit, they're like, "Oh, you fucking military people. Yeah, you're so mean." It's like, mean? No, just do it. You're procrastinating. You're putting it off. You're being lazy. Whatever it is, all mean words, right? All mean words. But if you had done it, you'd be done now, and you'd be happy about it too, right?
mm-hmm,
Fulfillment. But military people need to realize that we signed up to do a job to keep what we did away from those who didn't want to do it, right? So we did our job.
mm-hmm,
And we need to realize that those people aren't going to sit around and thank us for it either because they've never been through the struggle we've been through. So they can't possibly understand it. So they're not going to be appreciative. And it's going to make us fucking angry, which, okay, I'm speaking to myself. When I see people that aren't appreciative of things, I'm angry. Like, you don't understand. You
for
you
sure.
haven't been without if you don't appreciate what you have. You haven't struggled if you don't appreciate things that you have. You haven't seen anything in the world and you're making decisions based off your limited knowledge of what's going on this planet, and you think you know everything. That drives me crazy. And I think a lot of military, at least I did, think civilians think that way. And they do because they've never had to think another way.
Mm-hmm.
So we did our job, you know, and guys like, you don't even know we're at war. You don't even care. It's like, our job is to not let them think we're at war. Right. We chose to take that on. So we have to accept that's what I wanted to do. I raised my hand to do that. So that person who doesn't want to do it doesn't have to think about it. And now I'm mad that they don't think about it. That's kind of hypocritical. So
Yeah.
I try to remind veterans and active duty people that, look, they're not in the military. I don't think about what doctors do or garbage people do. I don't get up at 3 a.m. and thank the garbage guy every Thursday for picking up the trash. But if he didn't do it, this country would go down fast with disease. So maybe you should thank the garbage guy, I can just
Yeah,
like people thank us for our service. I want to thank you for your garbage pickup. I want to thank you, doctor, for saving my arm. And because I can't do that shit.
for sure. Yeah, no, 100%. I like. So my buddy was on the last podcast, Michael Hanthorne. He was a Fallujah veteran. He got, he had him and basically everybody in his platoon had issues when they got back because they were assigned to do mortuary affairs. So all they did was clean up dead bodies for a month. Dead surgeons. And he said recently he's been doing a new kind of therapy with the VA. And that's what you're talking about is kind of what he's had to realize. Like, hey, just because these civilians weren't in the military doesn't mean I can't trust them or whatever. Like, I have to understand that I made this decision to join, and that was me, and that, I should hold no ill will towards people that didn't want to join. Why would I want them to understand what it was like?
Right.
Like, you don't want people to feel that, or in some of these really bad situations and stuff. Like, you want people to understand, but at the same time, it's like, is it really fair to put them in that position to actually understand? Because that's not something.
Right. They didn't want it. They didn't want it, and that's fair. That's freedom to choose to go do this job. I chose this job. I wasn't drafted. I don't know anybody that was drafted. So everybody. I asked when we do a lot of speaking, and I ask people, hey, raise your hand if you were drafted. Nobody raised their hand. I go, okay, so you all volunteered. Yeah. Okay, who's mad at civilians? And hands go up. I go, why? Well, they don't even know, blah, blah, blah. Exactly. You're doing your fucking job. Shut up. You're doing your job, so they don't know about your job.
Mm-hmm.
How many people know what your civilian non-friends are doing? What do they do for a living? They don't know. Yeah, they don't know your job either. Now, if those civilians are putting down military because they don't know anything about it, that says about that person, specifically that person, not every civilian. So that person could be a jerk and saying things because he doesn't like the military because he doesn't understand it. But we can be mature enough to realize that individual doesn't understand the military. They're just talking shit.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get emotional about it, they win, right? They win. Emotions always, you lose with emotions. We teach people when you're arguing with your spouse, if emotions are involved, forget about it. Stop, let the emotions go away, talk facts. Mm-hmm. Facts tell the story. Emotions, man, spin everything out of control.
Yeah, for sure. And, a big thing, too, that people got to realize, that veterans got to realize, too, is that, the world we come back to is built by non-military people. Yeah. Thank you to the construction workers that have built the cities that we're, to the schools that we're sending our kids to, or the houses that we're living in, to the stores that we're buying our food from. That's also an important part of society. And to say that they didn't do their part, in our society that's a bad take from a military member.
I hate to hear that. You didn't fight. Okay. You didn't stock the fucking grocery shelves. Yeah. Which keeps people going. We all have a job. It's called a tribe, right? And when we do our job, we come back, and anybody that wants to be held on a pedestal, like Dave Grossman said, he wrote on killing and what's his next book, something else. But he wrote the biggest thing. My wife talked to him on the phone and said, what do you think the biggest thing killing the military is right now? He goes, ego. Thank you for your service. Some people take that and like, oh, shut up. Other people take it and think, you're not thanking me for my service. He goes, that puts you on a pedestal from everyone else in the tribe when we all should be equal. The garbage guy has to pick up garbage and we get disease. The doctor can save us from the shit we probably brought on ourselves and broken bones and fix that. And math teachers teach us this. And, so there's people out there that do those things that we don't do. We did our part, and that was it. And if we stand there and go, our part was the hardest. Okay, well, I don't know your part, so how can I make that claim?
Yeah, for sure.
So that self-awareness of what we're saying and actually thinking about it and realizing I may not have been taught everything on the planet there is to know. So I might be in the dark on some things. Maybe I better chill out on my running my mouth so fast,
Mm-hmm.
Embrace that pause before we try to defend ourselves so much.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's great advice, And again, it's perspective. People have to understand that, life isn't the way that just you saw it. Everyone else has their own perspective.
Right. Like combat. People are like, he's lying. He didn't do that. He didn't see that or do. Like in combat, you know what I saw? It was like looking through 2 toilet paper tubes. I saw what I saw that was affecting me. I couldn't tell you what was happening 6 inches that way because I was focused on my shit under duress. I remember the whole story. I hear other guys tell stories nowadays. I'm like, that happened really? I saw Black Hawk Down. I'm like, did that really happen? Because I don't know any of that shit. You know, I didn't see any of that funny shit. But it was other people's perspectives, and other people were there, and other people were on a different street in a different house. So a whole shitload of things happened that I don't know about. The same thing with things that I did that people don't know about. And they're like, you didn't do that, or nobody said that to me, but like people have said he didn't do that. I'm like, how do you know? Did you see him? No, but that doesn't seem really, because you were over here doing your shit. You didn't watch him not do his shit, so let it go. You know,
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Are the veterans of that battle? Do you guys look at Black Hawk Down, the movie and the book and stuff? Are those pretty accurate depictions? Do you believe, or like, what's the feeling of that kind of those media sources being out there for the general public to consume?
when I saw Black Hawk Down, I thought, well, first I thought, man, did all that shit happen? Because I didn't see half of that stuff. So, you know, and it was told from a Ranger perspective, and a couple of unit guys that had gotten out, I think, that contributed. So they didn't get a lot of the unit stuff. I talk a little bit about in my book, more unit stuff, and on social media, you can hear some more stuff from other guys. But I think it captured the chaos. It's Hollywood, of course, but what they have trouble capturing is the fear. I can't watch it. I have the fear. I have the emotions that go with it now. I know what things mean when I see it. So I can't watch it anymore. But a regular civilian watching it, they're like, oh, it's a really good movie. It really depicted a lot of good shit. And it was the best Army movie I've ever seen, or the best combat movie I've ever seen. And I think, I don't know, because I didn't see a lot of that shit when I was there. I saw some other gross, crazy shit, but it captured the chaos. It captured the what's going on, kind of, whoa, and then there was some Hollywood shit that turned me away from it a bit that never happened. But I get Hollywood movies, need to be more exciting than real world, or nobody'd go to it. So you got to church up a little bit to make it exciting. But I felt that it captured the chaos and some fear pretty well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's good, I guess. A lot of people, if you see some war movies, people see them and they're like, that's complete bullshit. People that were there. So as long as you feel like they're kind of giving or putting a point across, that's accurate, then.
Yeah. And like I walked out of Saving Private Ryan, the opening scene, the hitting the beach, I could feel that shit. I had to walk out. I was getting really overwhelmed and emotional. So I think like Saving Private Ryan, the initial taking the beach scene with the bullets and shit, I was like, fuck me. That was good, And like Jen and I are in the process. They're writing a screenplay for hopefully a movie for my book and her book. And we're really looking at who's going to do that, who will produce that now. Like not this dude who likes to blow shit up every 30 seconds, which is be great for a fun movie, but we want a real movie, not a war movie. There's enough war movies. We want a movie that captures the human aspect of it. And then when you come home, like that shit, what goes on at home that civilians don't know about? You warriors are tough. Like, man, we go home, our families are fucked, and we spend years trying to get that right again. And it's a struggle. So we want to bring that to light. It's like the love story part of it, I guess.
Yeah. The like known issue of divorces in the military, it's like, it's not unknown that there's issues that come along with, not only, and people will think that maybe that it's from the combat stress or whatever, and people come back and there's issues there, but it's not even just that. It's just when you're in a high tempo job, you're just not home.
Any job. I tell everybody, salesmen get divorced, the CEOs get divorced. You're gone. You're focused over here on your job and you're doing it well, which means you're giving up shit over here at home.
And it's easy to really buy into whatever job you're doing in the military because the stakes are real. Because you can look at it and go, this is really life and death. Like if something goes wrong here, someone could actually die. This isn't like some jobs where if something goes wrong, well, oh no, the project's delayed by a day or something. Yeah. This is like, it can be life or death. And that kind of seriousness causes, people, that's why I wanted to be good at what I was doing as a JTAC, because I was like, if I fuck this up, drop a 2,000-pound bomb on some random building, there's real consequences to that. Yeah. So it's easy to lose focus of the family side and focus a lot on the job side because you're worried that you won't mess it up, or you're worried you'll mess it up or whatever,
And that makes it normal. Living in that stress, living in that worry makes it normal for the rest of your life. And you don't even realize when you're under stress anymore. People are like, that's such a stressful job. You're like, what? And it really is taking the same toll on you. You've just done it every day. So to you, it's normal, but you don't realize what it's doing to you. Other people have never done it and see you do one thing. They're like, oh my God, how do you do that? And you're like, what do you mean? Every day of my life, 3 times a day? What? Like, you should be dead by now. Like, what? You don't even know about it. And then when you start hearing about it, you're like, oh, that's why I behave this way. That's why I feel this way. That's why I say things like this. And then when you have that awareness, hopefully you go do something about it, if you need to.
I think what, the residual effect for me is that I am so laid back. Everything just seems like, okay, like, oh, that's not a big deal. Cause I've seen what a big deal actually looks like, like what something that's scary or whatever what is actually like that, So a lot of stuff I see, and people like we talked about at the beginning, people complain about stuff and I'm like, whatever, man, shit, dude, I can turn my lights on. I got clean water coming out of my out of my faucet.
Nobody's trying to kill you. That's where I'm at today. I wasn't like that for years. I was like, everything was a big deal. Everything. Like everything had that same, I needed to attack everything with the same ferociousness. Like, you forgot my fucking payday candy bar, with the same as, oh, you murdered my family member. It's the same ferociousness, and that you can't sustain that, man. And I finally, I'm entering in that chill. Like, oh, I used to make the comment like, nobody's shooting at you, but I was still jacked up about everything. Right. And then I realized, I'm talking a good game, but I'm jacked up, right? I finally realized, okay, I don't need to sit with my fucking face in the door okay, I can use my steak knife and I can break this bottle and stab fuckers if they come in here. I don't need to live like that anymore, man. I've learned to chill out. When people freak out, I'm like, what are you freaking out about? It'll work out, man. It's just experience, And when you've had the experience of most shit works out, if you prepare yourself for it, most shit works out.
Yeah, 100%. Man, well, Tom, this has been a great interview. I really appreciate you coming on and telling your story. I'd love to have you back on to, you can talk about other operations. I don't want it to feel like that was your only operation, and that I don't want that to be the only thing you're known for. So if you guys are working, I know you just mentioned working on a movie deal and stuff like that. If you ever want to come on and talk more about that and information, let me know. Before we get off here, where can people learn more about you, learn more about your book, All Secure, and stuff like that?
Yeah, you can find everything at allsecurefoundation.org. Everything's on our website. Our new podcast is on there. You can find that. We're starting our 2nd season in February. Our 1st season was a short one, but had a lot of good things on there, and learned a lot. But you can find us on Facebook, All Secure Foundation, or Instagram, or even Twitter. But everything you need will be in our website, to include who we help, how we can help you, or just reach out if you need to chat, with one of our counselors and stuff like that. So we love helping the community. We want to bring it back, and I'd love to come back on and chat. I didn't realize we're already at the time we're at. I was like, holy crap, that went by quick.
Yeah, almost 2.5 hours.
We just got to the first 2 years of my career.
That's crazy, right? It's so crazy. You see, you shouldn't have done so much. You're so active out there.
Right, I'm all broken down now, but
man, it's good stuff. And again, I always appreciate guys like you that want to come on and talk about these kind of situations, because obviously some people don't want to talk about it and completely understand that. But I also think that people should know, the real world needs to know what guys are doing so they can understand military, just like we understand them and their jobs and stuff like that,
Yeah, when we have that understanding, we can respect each other more.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Well, everybody can check out my stuff at jkramergraphics.com. You can get some custom graphics and stuff there. You can check out my Instagram at Former Action Guys, at Former Action News, all that on Instagram. Yeah, man. Really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.